Verde. From Cabo Verde, Santa Maria. Hey, Judy Santa Maria. I'm excited about life again. Oh, wow.
Officers had come to arrest a woman for fraud. They expected bank records, maybe a few lies. Instead, they stepped into a quiet, cramped bedroom in Canterbury, and something in the air stopped them cold. A faint odour, faint but familiar, one that no amount of cleaning spray could mask. Inside was something so horrifying that it would leave attending officers requiring intense therapy. In May of 2024, Jeremy Rickards walked into a pub in Canterbury. He was quiet, polite, but impossible to ignore. His face was swollen, bruises ringed his eyes, and he had a deep cut marked across his forehead. When asked, he smiled and said that he'd been in a car accident, because the truth was harder to admit. Jeremy, a 65-year-old retired geologist, had spent 27 years married to Maureen Rickards. By that spring, witnesses described him as fragile. He was now thin, bruised, and subdued. He looked like a man wearing down under something very heavy. Tenants living in the same building saw the signs too. On more than one occasion, they heard shouting, objects being slammed against walls, and on one occasion, someone even heard what sounded like a body being hit. When Jeremy was seen with yet another injury, a large bruise stretching from his eye to his ear, one tenant urged him to go to a hospital. He said simply, "Maureen was in a bad mood with me." By early June, he'd finally had enough. Jeremy temporarily moved out and stayed in another flat, and there he was spotted with even more injuries, old and new. Rib fractures, fresh bruises, and he was walking with a limp. Everyone who saw him noticed the same thing. He seemed scared, a shell of his former self. But despite this visible evidence, there was no police report. He didn't go to the hospital. There was no interventions at all. And so, with nowhere else to go, Jeremy had to go back home. The home on St Martin's Road wasn't isolated. Jeremy and Maureen lived in a multi-unit building with other tenants. It had thin walls, shared entrances, and to an extent, shared lives. People noticed things. One tenant remembered Jeremy coming down the stairs slowly, holding the banister like he was in pain. He was bruised up as usual, and his eye was almost swollen shut. Another resident said they often heard shouting from upstairs, and sometimes banging too. One time the sounds were so extreme that they did consider calling the police, but they didn't. Maureen Rickards was studying law, and she liked to record things. She'd recall calls, arguments, even her own voice. It may have started as a habit for her coursework, or maybe she was just paranoid. Just 1 week before Jeremy was last seen, Maureen uploaded this video to YouTube. She seems paranoid, rambling, and believes that she is at the center of some kind of police conspiracy.
Because of Kent's police, I bought me padlocks for my door. Because of day management intrusion on my space, because my life is at stake. Today, the 30th of April, I went to buy padlocks. That's the receipts. You see the date? I bought padlocks. Extra lock for my room. And I've got 7 cameras. A body cam, cameras in hidden places, all to protect my life. I'm recording this to show the measures I've gone to protect myself from Kent's police and whomever else from Christchurch University has targeted me for things I do not know about. I am the victim. They're turning me into the villain because I'm black. Every black nation, I will keep posting videos of means I'm taking to keep alive whilst in the UK in 2024 because of the color of my skin.
In the days and weeks leading up to Jeremy's disappearance, Maureen recorded herself berating him. The tone was chilling. It wasn't just pure rage, but contempt. In one clip, Jeremy sounds confused and weak. He's lying on the floor, groaning. Maureen stands over him, mocking. Another recording is more direct. "You know I'll kill you," she says, calm and deliberate. She continued, "I'll do you harm, Jeremy. You know I will." Jeremy was always polite, private. He never asked for help, so nobody helped him. And then came the night after he was last seen. One neighbour was up late when they heard something heavy being dragged across the floor above them. They said it moved slowly, scraping across the floorboards, and then nothing. Moments later, they saw Maureen in the back garden, and although it was dark, they could see her standing near the bushes for a very long time. Jeremy Rickards was last seen on June the 7th, 2024. Nobody saw him after that day. Not neighbours, not friends, not his daughter. But Maureen Rickards, she just kept on living like always. In the weeks that followed, Maureen was in fact seen out shopping in Canterbury. She visited multiple stores between June the 20th and June the 30th. And strangely, she used Jeremy's bank card every single time. One transaction, though, stood out. On June the 20th, Maureen purchased cleaning supplies, disinfectants, gloves, and bin bags. Neighbours remembered her smiling. She even hired someone to cut the grass in the back garden. But she had one specific request. Could they please leave the clippings under the bushes? It was an odd thing to ask, but they didn't question her. So they just dumped the lawn trimmings near the base of the garden as instructed. This video is from June the 25th, so Jeremy had been missing for a couple of weeks by this stage. Maureen is going bonkers at her neighbours. It's rare that we see into someone's life like this. And honestly, the entire situation looks like a nightmare. You can really see just how paranoid and infuriated she is with everyone and everything.
Look, Maureen, come on. Excuse me, please. What? Excuse me, please. Simple instruction. Excuse me, please. Au revoir. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning. Go get live. Go get live. This is Tuesday morning. Go get live. That's the university. Go apply. Regardez. De Chris. Dans ma avenue, on peut play. Hey, s'il vous plaît. Tu es malade ou bien? Hey, come back. If you dare, you come back. I will do to you what the British system refuses to do to you. There is war in the world. You're coming here to fool yourselves. Go and read the Bible or something. Tuesday morning, Danny and his friends again.
On June the 27th, Maureen used Jeremy's phone to send a message. It was to their daughter, Chima. The message said that Jeremy had gone to Saudi Arabia for work. And this was strange because Jeremy had never mentioned any plans like this. And to add to the weirdness, the tone of the message didn't quite sound like him either. Chima responded to the number, asking him directly, "Is this mum pretending to be dad?" She got no reply. And the next day, another message arrived. This time it was something far more shocking. "Jeremy is dead," it read. "He did it to himself. There were witnesses. I was asleep." This message was sent from Jeremy's number, but of course it was extremely suspicious. Maureen's messages to her daughter grew more bizarre. Maureen in fact blamed her for Jeremy meeting his tragic end. Chima was very disturbed. She messaged back asking for clarity, but she never got a proper answer. Eventually, she just blocked the number. And then on July the 5th, she reported her father missing to Kent Police. Officers began checking travel records, and it turned out that there was no sign that Jeremy had left the UK. His mobile phone hadn't been topped up since June the 8th, and there was no sightings of him. In fact, there was no activity at all apart from Maureen using his bank card. And then came the smell. It wasn't until July that neighbour Oksana Kandarova noticed the smell. It wasn't food or rubbish or an animal, she said. It was very unpleasant, very strange. I had never smelled something like that before. And after a family event on June the 14th, she stopped using the garden entirely. By the time the police came, the neighbours already knew that something terrible had happened. They just didn't know quite how terrible it would be. And this brings us back to July the 11th, when police came to arrest Maureen for fraud for using Jeremy's bank card, but what they found instead was the final proof of everything that Chima had feared.
Maureen, hello. Hello. So the time is 12:23. Okay, so I'm placing you under arrest under suspicion of fraud.
Fraud of what?
False representation. Okay, so
False representation of what?
so the circumstances are you're using your husband's card without permission to make purchases. Okay.
Police arrived with a warrant for fraud. Maureen Rickards had been using her husband's bank card for weeks. She still claimed that he'd passed whilst working abroad, but there was no record of him ever leaving the country. At this time, it was supposed to just be a financial crime relating to a missing person. But from the moment they entered the home, officers knew that something else was going on. The first smell that hit them, it wasn't from the garden, it was from inside the home, and specifically, Maureen's bedroom. Maureen was arrested for fraud regarding Jeremy's bank accounts, but then as police officers searched for evidence, they realised the situation was far more serious than that. A small cupboard sat near the wall. It looked ordinary, but when crime scene officers began investigating the floor beneath it, they found something sinister. There was coagulated red DNA. It had soaked through the cupboard, through the carpet, through the floorboards, and onto the ceiling of the flat below. And Maureen had tried to clean it. She used bleach, scrubbing it, and even rearranged the furniture to try and hide it. But still, the scent lingered, and so did the stains. In the garden, officers simply followed the complaints that they received from the neighbours, and under that pile of grass cuttings, the cuttings that Maureen had been so keen to store there to help the soil, that's where they found the holdall, and it was holding something heavy. They unzipped it, and inside was Jeremy Rickards. He was clothed only in underwear, wrapped in black bin bags. He had been dragged inside the bag, down 2 flights of stairs from his home into the garden. At the time this next video was posted, Jeremy was already missing. Maureen seems to believe someone in a neighbouring flat is committing crimes.
On live stream to the social media. Social media because of my own defense. Kent police are targeting me in this address. Hence, I am protecting myself. I bought up to 17 cameras. Body cam, outdoor cam, indoor cam. Have I set them up? Nope, not yet. But my phone is immediate at this time, and I'll use it. Because without a phone, without recording, George Floyd's story would never have been told.
The entire video is over 14 minutes long, and it is very rambling. However, this section is particularly troubling. Maureen walks over to the pile of grass that Jeremy was found under. I will play the section of the video that she recorded at that location, because with full context, it is just really quite insane.
It kind of itches if you walk past it. And God help you if you have a dress like I do right now. I'm wearing my bathrobe. I'm not naked. Underneath my, what's it called? Night robe. Whoa, you see? It's all turns. That's why they put these cones here, like danger. I think it's a fence. Because there's a court down the road. All the houses are here. You see? It's mostly student housing from different universities. Cheap accommodation, you know. It's not cheap there. The cheapest is $420 in this house.
The post-mortem would later reveal exactly what Jeremy had endured. There were 5 sharp implement wounds to the chest. 2 of them were deep enough to pierce his heart. But they weren't his only injuries. His ribs had been fractured weeks earlier. He had injuries from being throttled too, but these were old and still healing. He had bruises across his head, face and torso. It was now clear that this wasn't a single act of evil. It had been a horrifying campaign, a slow erosion of his body, his mind, and his life. There's something especially chilling about someone who records themselves doing something that they know is evil. In Maureen's case, it wasn't just rage-fueled outbursts. She wasn't just caught in the heat of the moment. She was composed, controlled, and then she decided to press record to capture herself harming Jeremy. Some experts call this punitive surveillance. It's when someone like Maureen keeps records, not to reflect or reminisce, but to dominate. They do it to prove their power, to rewrite reality in their favour. Maureen wasn't acting out of impulse. She was studying law. She understood evidence, timelines, and plausible deniability. She tried to stage Jeremy's demise as a disappearance, then as a self-inflicted incident abroad. Then she deleted messages, tried to scrub the evidence, made purchases with his card while pretending he was still alive. All of this shows that it wasn't just a loss of control, but the very definition of control over someone else's existence. And even when all these actions became public, Maureen never admitted to it. In court, she told jurors she was being set up, that the police were framing her. She played the victim, the confused wife. But behind closed doors, Maureen had held her husband under siege. People who knew Jeremy described him as gentle, as soft-spoken and respectful, and it's often kind people with those traits that make someone more vulnerable to coercive control. Jeremy never retaliated. He never reported his wife, and even when people asked about his injuries, he tried his best to minimize them. It's worth noting that sometimes this behavior doesn't come from someone twice your size, because it simply doesn't need to. It can just come from someone who knows how to isolate, manipulate, and humiliate. It comes from someone who convinces the victim, and sometimes everyone around them, that nothing is really wrong, often using plausible deniability, and they do this until it's far too late. Maureen followed through on a pattern that she'd spent years rehearsing, and in the end, she didn't just destroy Jeremy, she tried to erase his existence entirely. When Maureen was arrested, she didn't react with panic. She played confused. What body? She asked. But the evidence was obviously overwhelming. When Maureen was rearrested, her behaviour became even more bizarre. She even pretended to be unconscious in the police van. However, the officers didn't believe her and basically dragged her out.
Maureen, come on. Yeah, you're going to come and help us? We can see your eyes twitching.
I am not moving from here. You tell the government. You tell my university.
Right,
you tell Dr. Chima. You tell your...
Her DNA was found on the bin bags that wrapped Jeremy's remains, and the bedroom cupboard stain even matched the outline of his body. Cleaning products had been bought using his card, and worst and most foolishly of all, she'd even recorded herself threatening to do what it appears she eventually did. Police also brought in a forensic entomologist. By analysing the insects found on Jeremy's remains, they narrowed down the time of his passing to somewhere between June the 8th and June the 26th. And that window did indeed align with the last time that anyone had seen Jeremy, and with a timeline of Maureen's lies. At trial, Maureen's defence was erratic. She claimed to be spooked. She said that she was being set up, and when pressed she said, "Something scary is going on," but would the jury be convinced? They heard how Jeremy had tried to explain his injuries as accidents, how Maureen texted their daughter pretending to be him, how she gave herself away with phrases that he would never use. They heard the recordings. They saw the physical damage done to Jeremy's body. The pathologist testified that his injuries showed prolonged maltreatment, not just the result of a single outburst. Prosecutors called Maureen a callous person, someone who inflicted unimaginable pain and suffering. They also argued that she showed no remorse, only attempted manipulation. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours, and on March 13th, 2025, Maureen Rickards was found guilty of murder. She didn't react when the verdict was read aloud. There was no tears and no shock. On April 9th, 2025, Maureen Rickards stood before the judge at Canterbury Crown Court. The room was quiet as the sentence was delivered. The court acknowledged the prolonged suffering, the manipulation, the cold, calculated effort to cover up the crime, and the lack of any remorse. Maureen Rickards was sentenced to life in prison for what she did to her husband. The judge called it a cruel and sustained campaign, one that ended in an act of shocking brutality. She'll serve a minimum of 23 years before becoming eligible for parole.
Can we go into 2017 with positive feelings when like this happens? Like, how do you deal with that?
We all grow up with aspirations, but most kids chop and change their goals throughout childhood and end up in a field that they never expected. If that wasn't the case, there'd be a lot more pirate ninjas and karate princesses in the world. Some of us aren't sure what to do with our lives until we talk through our options with a careers advisor. Others are pushed by a natural drive within them that gives them a clear-cut goal in their heads, with a path already carved out for them, as though it is their destiny set in stone. And that's how it was for Rachel Longridge. Rachel grew up with her younger brother Michael in their Sherbrooke home with mother Christine and father Erin. It was a loving family unit, and the siblings got along well. Rachel had always been inherently caring, thinking of others and lending a helping hand. These qualities, along with her infectious personality, made her quick to make friends and form strong bonds. She and her childhood best friend Marley were thick as thieves. The pair had been born just a week apart from one another in May of 1995, and they grew up celebrating joint birthday parties together. Rachel lived in Sherbrooke, and Marley lived in Dovercourt. The two of them would cheekily cut through neighbours' yards to see one another, even though they'd been told to walk around the trail that divided the two. They were truly inseparable. Marley would later share that their sleepovers had always resulted in bellyaches from so much laughter on her social media. Rachel's soccer coach, Sandra Hansen, said she liked to goof around a lot and she was a good player. And by all accounts, Rachel was kind, caring, and incredibly popular. And this makes what happened next all the more difficult to digest. Rachel already knew that she wanted to become a nurse, but after her father Erin was diagnosed with cancer and the family spent time in and out of the hospital, she just knew that she had to pursue it. Rachel applied to the University of Alberta for nursing, and she started there after finishing high school. It was there that she met new friends Danielle Burke and Dakota Burgum, and they all hit it off instantly and became a real threesome. Rachel's struggles with her dad having cancer cemented her decision and really fueled her. She was driven to achieve her goals despite her home life becoming tough. During the many hours she spent training at Edmonton Clinic Health Academy, she really did make a huge impact on many lives. Rachel was clearly the type of person who could handle pretty much anything. Becoming a nurse is not easy, but that didn't matter because this dream was important. This was made evident by the fact that the tenacious nursing student attended her course the day after her father sadly lost his battle on December the 1st, a true show of strength and dedication. Rachel's hard work and tenacity in the face of such sad circumstances did pay off. On December the 8th, she graduated from her nursing program and was anxiously waiting to hear back about working in the intensive care unit of the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute. The formidable trio of study buddies celebrated finals with a trip up to Jasper immediately after, and even Marley, Rachel's childhood best friend, joined them for the fun. The four of them headed up the mountains to unwind after all of their hard work. It was on this journey to Jasper that Rachel finally received the news that she was waiting for. Her offer was confirmed and she was due to start work on January the 3rd. This put everyone into pure celebration mode. Her friends were thrilled for her, and it also meant that she and Dakota would now be working in the same building as one another. Rachel couldn't have been happier. All of her hard work had been worth it, and her dreams were now coming to fruition. After a few drinks and dinner, the girls ventured into the hotel hot tub in spite of the wind chill warnings and the late time of year. There they sat for hours enjoying themselves so much that they didn't even mind the chilling air until, that is, hotel staff finally shut them down, with their hair frozen stiff from frost. This truly was a night that the best friends would remember forever, but it was even more special than they knew at the time. In late December, the season of goodwill was in full swing, with everyone celebrating the festivities that come with the run-up to the new year. The year ahead looked to be promising, and with Rachel's dreams about to become a reality, there really was plenty to celebrate. The Longridge family planned a small party, one which Marley, among others, was planning to go to celebrate Christmas Eve with them. None of them could have imagined that they would instead be mourning a severe loss. The day before the family's planned celebrations, 18-year-old Michael Longridge, Rachel's younger brother, came home to a scene he was unprepared for. Not that anyone could ever be prepared for what he walked in on when he entered the Sherbrooke bungalow in Edmonton that he had always called home. Michael returned home that day on December the 23rd, 2018, to find his sister being terribly attacked. Like any other with a strong sibling bond, he rushed straight towards danger. He wanted to help his sister without a second thought about his own safety. A brave act, considering the attacker was hysterically wielding a meat cleaver and was attempting to remove his sister's head from her body. Michael rushed towards them and fought hard to hold the attacker's arms back, trying to prevent them from doing any further harm. His reactions were quick, adrenaline flooding his body, only he had arrived a few moments too late. With such severe injuries sustained, Rachel's time on this earth was ended before authorities arrived. Having witnessed the events firsthand, there was no doubt as to who was responsible. The terrifying and grisly scene that Michael had walked in on was likely made 1,000 times worse because the person wielding the cleaver was Christine, Rachel and Michael's own mother. The woman who had brought Rachel into the world had now taken her out of it, and in one of the most brutal ways possible. Police took the 50-year-old woman away in handcuffs after they were called with reports of an assault at around 4:30 p.m. Christine was taken into custody facing second-degree murder and possession of a weapon, but a psychiatric examination was immediately requested and an inquiry would soon follow. Christine had in fact been battling with her mental health for years. Many murderers are taken into custody displaying signs that they may be psychotic. Many require psychiatric assessments, and some even use mental illness as an excuse. And indeed, many offenders are not well, especially those whose crimes are of a particularly horrific nature. However, faking it evidently wasn't the case with Christine. The mother was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder in the 90s, following a delirium she experienced shortly after the birth of her son. People suffering from schizoaffective disorders can hallucinate quite heavily, which when combined with heavy mood swings can be a recipe for disaster. I will say that people with schizoaffective disorders are more likely to be victims than perpetrators. I feel it's important to make that known. It seems that with her disorder, Michael's birth kick-started her first real psychotic episode, an episode in which she suffered from some grandiose delusions. She believed her beautiful son to be the Messiah and was hospitalized on more than one occasion. Although the delusions experienced can be pretty strong, schizoaffective disorders can normally be managed with medication, and in most cases, people can live a relatively normal life. And Christine's illness had been well managed, that is, up until her husband's death the year before. Husband Erin had in fact played a big role in his wife's mental health care, not to mention the fact that the death of a loved one would move almost anyone into the reach of depression's grip. For Christine, with her disorder, it had certainly become a notable catalyst, and she slid firmly into its grasp. Those in her life would share with police investigators that Christine's mental health had been declining in recent weeks. The mother had never been violent in any way, shape or form. The aggression that drove her while she took such extreme actions, and their tragic results, came as a shock to everyone around the family. Many defended Christine, stating she was a loving mother, saying everything about this situation was purely tragic. A vigil was organised on campus for the late graduate, with over 250 people showing up to remember Rachel. Whilst there, they shared their fondest memories.
Anytime that I ever felt down, Rachel was there to be like, no, you can do it. We studied together, we cried together, we laughed together. We did so many things together and we had so many plans, and it's just heartbreaking to think that me and Dakota and my sister have to go on without her, and because she was supposed to be there, she was supposed to be our person for the rest of our lives.
Among the crowd was a mix of friends, students, teachers, patients, and the families of those that she had treated. Everyone in attendance had something to say about how charismatic and caring the young woman truly was. Her closest friends made a point to defend the relationship between Rachel and Christine, making it clear that the event was simply a tragic and unpredictable one. The focus of the vigil was very much on keeping things positive and supporting Michael, whose mother was now in custody and whose sister had passed. Michael didn't attend the vigil, but Marley shared the following with everyone present. The main thing he wanted for tonight was to let everybody know that his mom loves him and loves Rachel, and wanted everyone to know this is nothing but a mental health issue. Danielle Burke would share that Christine's illness was understood by Rachel's closest friends, describing it as understood and accepted. She also shared how Rachel had taken on her mother's care after caring for her father in his final days. She had now done the same for her mother in her own final days. Michael has repeatedly made it clear that the blame does not sit at the door of his mother. However, we can look at mental health care as a whole. Many of those closest to the case would hold the lack of mental health care support that Christine received, despite her history of psychotic breaks, as the real guilty party in the catastrophe. Christine's decline was evident in medical records, as the mother wasn't keeping up to date with her psychiatric appointments. She was, in fact, meant to have seen her psychologist on the 21st, just 2 days before she ended her daughter's time on this earth. Mother Christine's court appearance came on January the 10th, 2016, 1 week after her daughter should have started her first proper hospital job. There, the failures of the system were brought to light. Police had been called on October the 30th that year after neighbours found Christine curled up on her deck, screaming in a paranoid state. Had police called a mental health crisis team, a tragedy may have been prevented. It was then heard that Christine's sister drove her to the local ER later that very same night, but the hospital refused admission. Christine was then found running around outside in the snow without shoes a few days later. She was convinced her house was going to explode. On November the 7th, she was finally hospitalized following an attempt on herself, but she was only kept in for a week. And despite the seriousness of her mental decline, her medications were changed and she was only prescribed half her usual lithium dosage. Perhaps something could have been done. We will truly never know. Her messiah delusion then crept back into the scenario. This was just days before the tragic event. She became convinced that Rachel had to die to save Michael, something she repeatedly told those around her. Judge Wayne Renke was choked up throughout sentencing. Christine was charged with second-degree murder, but she was not found criminally responsible and was instead sent to a secure psychiatric hospital. Judge Renke said there was zero doubt that the woman knew what she was doing and that she intended to do it, but also ruled that delirium had taken over. When Christine attacked her daughter, she believed that she had the moral authority to kill. A GoFundMe page was set up by cousins to cover the funeral costs and to make sure that Michael had support. The case was viewed as an indictment of Alberta's mental health system, and subsequently, allegedly, steps were taken to improve it.
I just have no idea what happened to her, where she is. Nobody does, and it's pretty terrifying.
Hatch Park was still dark when the Lyft driver pulled away. It was just after 3 a.m. on a Monday. 23-year-old Mackenzie Lewick had landed in Salt Lake City only 1 hour earlier. She was returning from her grandmother's funeral in California. Now, she stood alone beneath the trees, wheeling her suitcase across the grass towards a parked car. There are many questions that remain unanswered, but what we do know is that within minutes, her phone was powered off and it would never be switched on again. And the man who was waiting for her had already turned off the security cameras in his house. By sunrise, he'd be cleaning up the scene, and by nightfall, he would light a fire that no one could ignore. But it would take nearly 2 weeks, a dozen warrants, and a backyard excavation before police realized just how deep and dark this case would go. Mackenzie Lueck was the kind of young woman that people knew for her warmth. Born and raised in El Segundo, California, she was close with her family, and especially her grandmother. That's why when her grandmother passed away in June of 2019, Mackenzie flew home without hesitation. The funeral was difficult, but while she was there, she kept in touch with friends, texting them updates and photos. By Sunday night, June the 16th, she was heading back to Utah, where she studied kinesiology at the University of Utah. Mackenzie was ambitious. She planned to graduate in 2020 and had spoken to advisors about nursing and even medical school. Outside of class, she worked at a biological testing lab and was a member of the Alpha Chi Omega sorority. Her life was full of plans, promise, and people who adored her. Just after 1:30 a.m. on June the 17th, Mackenzie's flight touched down in Salt Lake City. She sent a text message to her mother to say that she'd landed safely, and then at 2:42 a.m., she climbed into a Lyft taxi. However, Mackenzie didn't head home. Instead, she directed the driver to Hatch Park, about 20 minutes away. When they arrived at a destination, she told him that she was meeting a friend. The driver said she didn't appear scared or nervous. She got out of the car, wheeled her suitcase across the grass, and met someone waiting in another vehicle. The Lyft driver then drove off. This would be the last time that anyone would see Mackenzie Lueck alive.
North Salt Lake residents on alert tonight as police continue to investigate in and around Hatch Park, the last place 23-year-old Mackenzie Lueck was seen.
We had the undercover units in our apartment complex right across the street, just driving around, looking at everything, looking in everything.
Today, police releasing the last known photos of Mackenzie Lueck at the Salt Lake City International Airport, where she arrived early Monday morning, took a Lyft ride from the airport, and was dropped off here at Hatch Park in North Salt Lake around 3 a.m.
At this time, we cannot confirm the make and model of the vehicle that picked up Mackenzie, or the description of the person at Hatch Park on June 17th.
Which brings us to these cameras at the park.
Hatch Park doesn't have any cameras. We have some dummy cameras.
Cameras that might have captured critical clues aren't cameras at all, according to city manager Ken Leatham.
This park's on a main street. It's right near the police station, and so it gets a lot of attention and a lot of eyes are on this park.
But at 3 a.m., very likely empty.
Salt Lake City police just had 3 vehicles just go down the road.
Those who live across from the park say police continue asking for nearby surveillance footage, patrolling the neighborhood, searching for Mackenzie Lueck.
Mackenzie and Ayoola Ajayi had first connected months earlier. They met on a website called Seeking Arrangement. It was a controversial platform that catered to sugar daddies and sugar babies. And while it did carry a stigma, Mackenzie's friends didn't judge her. She was independent, financially conscious, and she wasn't naive. But what no one knew was just how dangerous Ayoola truly was. On the surface, he seemed accomplished. Originally from Nigeria, he was a US resident with a green card, and he'd worked IT jobs with recognizable companies. He'd even served briefly in the Army National Guard. But behind closed doors, there were warning signs. At Utah State University, Ayoola was kicked off campus in 2012 after visa violations and a theft investigation. When he was allowed to return in 2015, he didn't last too long this time either. He studied computer science, but he never graduated. In 2018, he self-published a novel. It was titled Forge Identity, that featured a teenager entangled in a world of violent crime. 2 characters in the book are burned after being murdered. But things got even worse. There was also The Room. Just 2 months before Mackenzie disappeared, a contractor came forward with a chilling account. Aaanyway had asked him to build a secret soundproof room situated beneath his front porch. He wanted it finished quickly. He said it must have no windows. The walls were to be fitted with hooks. A biometric fingerprint lock was to be put on the door. And when he was asked what all this was for, he simply claimed it was a place to hide alcohol from his Mormon girlfriend. The contractor thankfully refused the job, because to him, something about the request felt off.
And a local contractor has come forward, claiming Ajayi asked him in April to build a soundproof, hidden room behind a secret door at the house.
Never. I've never, ever had anybody ask me anything like this.
After he turned down the job, Ajayi persisted, making repeated requests through texts.
He was adamant about getting it done really fast, and money was no object, and he needed to get it done before his girlfriend came into town.
Later, a house cleaner would confirm that Aaanyway's home was loaded with surveillance cameras, especially in the bedroom. None of this was known to Mackenzie. By the time she stepped into his car at Hatch Park, he had already disabled his home security system, and he'd already decided exactly what he was going to do. Mackenzie's family hadn't heard from her since she sent a text message to her mother at around 2 a.m. on June the 17th. At first, they just assumed she was busy, but when she missed a midterm exam, when she failed to feed her cat, and when she didn't show up to a wedding that she planned to attend back in California, alarm bells really started ringing. This is a 911 call made by Mackenzie's father, Greg Lewick, when he started to realize that something wasn't right.
Yeah, I'd like to get, if possible, have a wellness check done on my daughter. I've been trying to get a hold of her all week. I was just wondering if I could have somebody maybe go by her house and check on her. Last time we heard from her, she got off the plane coming back from LA. It was 1 a.m. She was going to grab an Uber and go home, but that's the last I've heard from her.
So 1 a.m. this morning?
No, 1 a.m. Monday morning. So we've been trying to get a hold of her all week. Usually it's unlike her to return a call, but it goes straight to voicemails.
And does anyone have a key?
I don't know. The landlord may. I don't know of anybody that would be there besides her roommates that would have a key. You know what? I take that back. She said she dropped one behind the mailbox, but she could never get it out. So there may be one back there. Somebody can fish it out, but I don't know if she ever got it out or not.
Her friends now panicked too. Kennedy Stoner, a close friend and sorority sister, spoke to the media in those early days. She said Mackenzie had been devastated by her grandmother's passing. However, she said this disappearance felt entirely out of character. She's close with her family, Kennedy told reporters. She wouldn't just vanish. Police launched a search. They traced Mackenzie's movements after she landed at Salt Lake City International Airport. Surveillance footage showed her retrieving a brown suitcase from baggage claim. She looked tired but calm. Investigators then spoke to the Lyft driver who picked her up, and he confirmed that he dropped her off at Hatch Park and that she willingly got into another vehicle. He said that she didn't seem distressed and that she didn't signal for help.
Remember, I was actually going to turn off my my app and go home, but right then I got another order to go pick somebody up downtown. So I just went to go pick up that person. They seem to know each other really well because I think all I heard was, "How are you doing? How are your trip?" Just kind of basic greetings. The situation seemed very safe. She obviously knew the person that she was getting into the car with.
Investigators found that her final text message was sent at 2:58 a.m. and it was to Ajayi. Her phone powered off 1 minute later. Very quickly, detectives zeroed in on Ajayi.
Police say it was an Instagram follow made by Mackenzie's account yesterday that played a part in leading them to this home. Now, it is listed as an Airbnb by the homeowner. We know that several search warrants were executed in this case, one being for this home last night. Today, no one answering. And just before 1 this afternoon, multiple Salt Lake City police officers were back on the scene using what looked like binoculars to look at the home, but they didn't go inside. Many of them also canvassing the neighborhood in the backyard. You can see the area where police dug up.
Our detectives collected multiple items of evidence throughout the night that are in the process of being tested and analyzed. this will take some time. Last night, several people made us aware of a mattress and box spring that were given away from the residents at 547 North, 1000 West in Fair Park. We ask those who took those mattresses or box springs to please contact the Salt Lake City Police Department at 801-799-3000.
His story just wasn't adding up. He completely denied knowing Mackenzie at all, but their phone records told a very different story. So on June the 26th, police served a warrant and then began an exhaustive search of Ajayi's home. They brought in dogs, forensics teams, and excavation equipment. What they found shifted the investigation from a missing persons case to something far darker. Ajayi's neighbour actually noticed that some strange burned items had appeared in her garden. She contacted the authorities and they attended her property. This is the body cam footage from that visit.
Is it okay if we come back there and load? Is that okay? Hey, Sarge. You good for a minute? Yep.
So.
First aid after fire. You've talked to the detectives and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there. The quality something bad.
Behind Ajayi's garage, police uncovered a freshly dug area of soil. It didn't take long before that soil gave way to evidence that nobody wanted to find. There was human tissue, bone fragments, charred fabric, and something far more chilling. What appeared to be part of a human scalp. Hair was still attached. Elsewhere on the property, officers recovered Mackenzie's burnt personal items. This included her student ID. They also found a red gas can. Tests on the remains that they found in the back garden were confirmed to be that of Mackenzie Lueck.
This is the suspect's backyard. Right here is where police dug multiple holes in the ground. It's here where cops say they found charred human tissue matching Mackenzie's DNA. They also found personal items that were burned belonging to Mackenzie.
And so it was that it fell on Chief Brown to notify Mackenzie's parents.
This is one of the most difficult phone calls I've ever made. As both Greg and his wife Diana were devastated and heartbroken by this news.
And inside Ajayi's car was the unmistakable smell of gasoline. However, even with everything they'd found, there were still some vital pieces of evidence missing. This is the body cam footage of Ajayi's arrest.
What's going on, man?
So, detectives are ready to talk to you about everything that's going on real fast, so if you want to come, I'll give you a ride back to the house real quick.
But there's Fox News over there.
I know, I'm going to drive you back in my car. It's a Camry, so...
We'll stay away from the news.
Yeah, we're not going to go by the news.
But I don't want my face on the news.
I will do that so it does, okay? So stand up real quick.
Go ahead. We're just going to... Oh, are you arresting me or something?
No. Stand up.
Then why you're going to be detained for a little bit.
You're being detained, but just for a second, okay? I got to put you in handcuffs just while we're driving.
Per policy, we're just going to go talk to detectives for a little bit.
Why are you detaining me? Because you need to talk to detectives, and I need to transport you back. So my policy says every time someone's in my car, they will wear handcuffs. So that's why they're...
But there's a news over there.
They can come right back.
We're probably not going to take... We'll take you to another spot so you're not by the news.
Okay?
We just hung How up. did the news find out? Yeah, we were wondering the same thing.
I just want to make sure there's no weapons on you. So some money...
Earlier you said we could take your phone and download it. Are you still willing to do that or no?
I just need to call my lawyer and see if it's okay. Because I want to help as much as I can.
Sure.
But she's saying that some police just want to pin it on someone that they can pin it on me.
We have had a week and a half now to prepare. And we have been very busy because I care about Mackenzie. And I want her. I think you did care about her. I agree. And I know that there's more for you to tell me, and you're holding back, and I don't understand why. AJ, I just told you that your phone records and the location put you up at the meet. Do you think honestly and expect me to believe that you ended that conversation and somehow you and her location end up in the exact same spot?
Oh, I'm not doubting you. If I see that too, if I'm in your case, I would be asking myself, what are you asking me right now?
It's not a miraculous question.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
Stuff doesn't just happen.
No.
Yes, I agree with you.
I'm telling you to explain that. And so far, you have not.
Well, how do I explain something I don't know?
On July the 2nd, with mounting pressure and forensic evidence now stacked heavily against him, Ayoola Ajayi did something unexpected. Through his attorney, he told police where to look next. Ayoola's home sat in the Fair Park neighborhood of Salt Lake City. From the outside, it looked like any other suburban rental, grey, square, and quiet. But inside, something monstrous was just waiting to happen. Once he got Mackenzie inside, he bound her by the wrists, using both zip ties and rope. He began to manually throttle her with his hands. She begged him to stop. She tried to fight, but he carried on. Instead, he flipped her onto her stomach and then used a belt to assist him in his attack. He pulled on it until her time on this earth came to an end. Ajayi didn't call for help. There was no remorse, and it seems there was no panic. This was what he wanted. So he got to work. He took some of her belongings and threw them into the Jordan River. Then he dug a shallow grave in his backyard and buried her body. The next day, he returned to the grave, and this time he brought gasoline. Neighbors would later recall the smell, thick and chemical. One of them saw him standing over a fire pit with a red gas can in his hand. This was the same gas can police would later find in his car. Receipts confirmed that he purchased this can just hours after Mackenzie vanished. Logan Canyon is known for its winding roads and scenic trails. It's where people go to disconnect, where they go to breathe deeply, to hike and to heal. But on July the 3rd, 2019, searchers followed Ajayi's directions into Logan Canyon. This took them about 85 miles north of Salt Lake City, and there, in a wooded clearing off of a dirt road, they found another shallow grave. It was almost hidden beneath trees and brush. Upon digging, they found more of what he had buried for a second time, more charred remains. Zip ties still bound her arms behind her back. There were more fragments of clothing matching those in the backyard. It was clear Mackenzie had been moved, burned again, and then left to decay in silence. Phone records placed Ajayi in that exact location on June the 25th. This was just one day before police knocked on his door for the very first time. It seems he panicked, and instead of confessing, he dug her up and drove nearly 90 miles north to hide her body for a second time. What Ajayi didn't realize is that every mile left a trail, his digital footprint, surveillance footage, gas receipts. His lies were unraveling faster than he could bury them. Mackenzie had been found. The case went to court.
I spoke with Mackenzie's family this morning. Another devastating call. Despite their grief, we hope this will help them find some closure and justice for Mackenzie.
At this time, we will have a statement from the Lueck family read by Mackenzie's uncle.
The Lueck family would like to express their gratitude for the effort put forth by the Salt Lake City Police Department and all partnering agencies that assisted, as well as all of the people that provided tips on this case. They are also grateful to her community, her friends, and others around the nation who have supported this investigation. The family will not be taking any questions, and no interviews will be held. Inquiries should be directed to the Salt Lake City Police Department. Again, we ask that everybody respect the privacy of Mackenzie's family and friends at this time. Media requests and statements for the family will be taken by the Salt Lake City Police Department. Thank you.
On October the 7th, 2020, Ayoola Ajayi stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and to desecration of a human body. It's now he admitted everything. He also pleaded guilty to violating another woman, someone he had met on a dating app in 2018. She came forward after seeing Mackenzie's story in the news. The evidence against him was overwhelming, but it was more than just physical proof. His entire history pointed towards this moment. The disturbing blueprint had been unfolding long before Mackenzie ever boarded her flight. This was premeditation to the nth degree. Prosecutors had considered seeking the death penalty, but with his guilty plea, Ajayi avoided it. In exchange, Mackenzie's family was spared the anguish of a drawn-out trial. The perpetrator sat in court in an orange jumpsuit, his head lowered, offering an apology the district attorney would call hollow. My daughter Mackenzie Lueck was a sweet, amazing young lady, with the world ahead of her, her father said. I will never have the opportunity to see her blossom in life. The court heard from her cousin too. This is a nightmare you can't wake up from. On October the 23rd, 2020, 3rd District Judge Vernice Trees delivered the sentence. Ayoola Ajayi would spend the rest of his life in prison. There would be no chance of parole. She also added 5 more years for desecrating Mackenzie's body. In the courtroom, Ajayi spoke briefly. I'm sorry for what I did, he said, but no one believed him. Not the district attorney, not Mackenzie's family, nor the friends who had waited for justice for over a year. In the end, the question of why was never fully answered. Ajayi gave no motive. Prosecutors suggested it was simply to know what it felt like, to live out a fantasy. There was no argument, no fight, no history between them, but there was a lot of planning, and a plan that he carried out. And for a brief time he thought he got away with it, but Mackenzie's life left traces, and those traces led to the truth.
My missus had my son taken off of us, right, for social services. Yeah. So I did the wrong thing really, but I'm admitting to it now.
A van rolls down a quiet road on the outskirts of Devon. It's a bright afternoon, the windows are cracked. You can hear the hum of tyres on the road beneath them. In the passenger seat, a man begins to talk. It's not small talk, he's not joking. He starts describing something horrific, but he does it in a casual manner. He said it was her fault that this happened to her. He talks about using skills that he learned as a chef, skills of butchering, cutting up meat, and about getting rid of her where she'd never be found. The driver somehow stays calm. He nods, but he's not just a friend out for a drive. The man he's confessing to has his own secrets too. Secrets that would change everything in an investigation that had been dragging on for a decade. And to make it even worse for the man, every single word is being recorded. The man in the passenger seat never could have predicted what happened next. It was the evening of June the 6th, 2012. The Queen's Diamond Jubilee had just wrapped up. It was a 4-day celebration that lit up the entire country. In Bristol, the mood was still buzzing. That night, 32-year-old Claire Holland walked into Seamus O'Donnell's, a city centre Irish pub tucked into the old city. She had been drinking earlier that day, and by the time she arrived at the bar, she was in high spirits. CCTV showed her walking along Baldwin Street at around 9:30 p.m, heading towards a pub. Whilst inside, she chatted to staff and other patrons. She told people that she had plans to meet someone later, and that was the last time that anyone saw Claire Holland. She didn't go home. She never called. She didn't pick up her kids. She just vanished without a trace. Claire was from Lawrence Weston, a tight-knit community on the edge of Bristol. She was a mother of 4, and her youngest was just a baby when she disappeared. She'd had a rocky few years, a volatile relationship. She did have her struggles with alcohol, and she'd recently lost custody of her children. But at the time of her disappearance, she was trying to turn things around. She just moved into a new flat. She was painting, decorating, making plans for the future. According to her family, she had hope for things getting better. Her mother, Jackie, said Claire was proud of the progress that she was making. She had so much going on in her life that she was looking forward to, Jackie said, adding, she was changing her life around. At first, Claire's family thought she might have needed space. She had her struggles and she sometimes pulled away. But as the days passed, concern turned into panic. She still wasn't answering her phone. She hadn't accessed her bank account, and her children were still waiting. A few days later, she was officially reported missing. Police reviewed over 1,000 hours of CCTV footage, and that's when they found the video of her arriving at the pub, but they found no footage of her leaving. Still, staff there remembered her clearly. They confirmed that she left just after closing at 11:15 p.m. Some believe that she may have headed towards the harbour side, but beyond that, there was nothing. A few years later, the case went cold. But then, in 2019, a man was arrested on suspicion of murder. However, he was questioned and then released. No charges were filed, and once again, the silence returned. For nearly a decade, the case drifted into the background. Claire's family, though, kept hoping. Her mother, Jackie, said she still found herself speeding up when she saw someone who looked like Claire in the street. Claire's daughter, Rosie, was just 9 years old when her mother went missing. Now an adult and a footballer for Bristol Rovers, Rosie says everything she's achieved, she's done for her mother. She's missed out on everything, keen athlete Rosie said. Football, running, even meeting her grandchildren. Rosie said the hardest part was not knowing, not being able to say goodbye, not having any answers. The case resurfaced once again in 2021, 9 years after Claire vanished. Police launched a new wave of searches. Specialist dive teams combed through Bristol Harbour. A second pub, the Barrel House in Clifton, was then searched from top to bottom. A long shot, but worth a try. Police even messaged every Facebook friend that Claire had back in 2012. They asked them to think back to that week. A week that should stick in their mind, as it was, of course, the Jubilee weekend. But none of this helped. They were, however, convinced that Claire's disappearance was linked to a crime. But they still had no body. There were no witnesses. There was no crime scene. But what they did have was one name, Darren Osmond. And soon, they'd have something else. In 2019, 7 years after Claire vanished, police made their first real move. That's when they arrested Darren Osmond. Not only was he Claire's former partner, but he was the father of her child. At the time, there wasn't enough evidence to charge him, so instead he was released under investigation. But police had a feeling, and they weren't ready to give up, not by a long shot. Months later, in a strange twist, Osmond himself called 999 from a bar in Devon, where he was drunk, he was slurring his words, and then he confessed.
Please.
It's not an emergency, I just wrote to your colleague. I've handed myself in.
Okay.
And I've tried to do it already today.
Handing yourself for what?
It's not a good look for me.
What do you mean it's not a good look for you?
It's not a good look for me. It's basically, it's something that was, it's murder, mate.
Pardon?
It's murder.
It's murder? So you've committed a murder?
I haven't, personally, but I don't, sort of.
So you've committed a murder?
I haven't, but, sort of.
Well, what do you mean, sort of?
Well, I didn't do it.
Okay, so why are you handing yourself in if you didn't do it?
Because it was my ex.
What, it was your ex that committed the murder?
No. Look, I tried to hide myself into a police station earlier on.
Yeah.
And the place was it was banged up, it was shut, but they said the officers were on patrol. I knocked on the door. I tried. I've had enough of it all now. I saw the monkey off my back.
Right, so how were you linked to the murder if it wasn't you?
They said it was my ex.
Yeah, what was your ex? You murdered your ex?
Sort of.
What's your ex called?
Oh, God. Claire Holland.
Claire Holland?
Yeah.
Okay, and what happened to Claire?
Well, I don't know exactly. I wasn't there.
Okay, so what is it that you're needing to hand yourself in for?
I have tried. Don't tell me I haven't tried.
He told the operator that he himself had put an end to Claire Holland's time on this earth, and that now he was handing himself in.
Did they not tell you?
No, not massively.
Back.
Surprise me.
Surprise you? Back along 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't even know when it was now.
Yeah.
My missus had my son taken off of us.
Right.
For social services.
Yeah.
So I did the wrong thing, really, but I'm admitting to it now.
What's your partner's name? What's her name?
Claire Holland.
Claire Holland. Okay, and do you know her date of birth?
No.
No. And when was that roughly?
About 7 years ago, but
7 years ago. Where was it?
in Bristol.
In Bristol. Okay.
I didn't do it.
You didn't do it?
I didn't do it.
Okay.
I had it arranged.
Yeah.
And I won't say any more than that.
Okay.
Right. What's your first name? Daniel, is it?
Darren.
Darren
Osmond.
Darren, just relax a minute, mate.
I've just had it up to my eyeballs, bud. I've had enough of ducking and diving and looking over my shoulder and all the rest of it. I've had enough. I just want to get it. Whatever's done's done. It's all in it. Whatever's done's done, and I can't turn back the clock. Just want to get it dealt with, innit?
You haven't told us anything.
You told us
you
you
said
said
something
something
over the phone.
and something happened about 7 years ago, but you haven't said anything
But you haven't
else.
said what?
I had her killed.
Right, okay. How?
I gave some money to someone and they had it done.
Right, okay.
But I can't say any name, obviously no names or numbers or anything like that.
The time is 04:26. I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. Okay, you don't have to say anything that may harm you. Don't mention when questioned. Something to you later on in court, and then if you do say maybe good evidence. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I am going to put you in handcuffs. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just bring your hands back to back for me. That's it. Thank you very much. That's it.
When police arrived though, Osmond changed his story. He now said that he hadn't done it, but that he had had it arranged. So that should be case closed, but frustratingly, no. The very next day, he claimed that he now didn't remember saying anything at all, and that he was simply too drunk. Still though, this obviously put the suspicions of investigators up, and that's because this wasn't the first time that Osmond had slipped. He had in fact told friends over the years that it was him who put an end to Claire. He told a former colleague that he dumped her body in Avonmouth docks. He told another person that he paid someone £500 to get rid of her. In fact, there were 6 different people. He made 6 different confessions, and yet there was no evidence. No body, no forensics, no weapon. If police were really going to get him, they needed more than just hearsay. They needed cold, hard proof. So, in 2020, they launched a secret operation. And honestly, this twist is like something from a movie, and I find it crazy that this stuff happens in real life. For nearly 2 entire years, from late 2020 and into 2022, police assigned an undercover officer to befriend Osmond. They gave him a name, Paddy O'Hara, and they gave him a backstory. He was a criminal type, someone that Osmond might trust. The 2 of them met through mutual connections, And then they started hanging out. They played snooker, they took walks together, and they chatted over drinks. Paddy never asked direct questions, but honestly, he didn't have to, because over time, Osmond just started talking, and he did it more than once. In fact, he couldn't seem to shut up about what he'd done, and every word was being recorded. In one conversation, Osmond told Paddy that he had throttled Claire. He said he then used his kitchen skills, he was a trained chef, to dissect her body. He ran his hand across his own torso and made a slicing sound. He said he then disposed of her in the water, that the massive overflow at Avonmouth docks kept her body weighed down so that it wouldn't float back up. He said that the weapon was long gone, that it was now hidden among another chef's kitchen tools. And then he leaned back and said, "It's all done and dusted. Everything's gone." The audio is really bad, but I will play this confession for you, as its contents are really quite intense and quite bizarre. However, I'll also add a timestamp to skip it if you want to.
I know, but you know, it is what it is. It's done. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, like I say, I'm about it now. If there was anything that, for instance, you want to know, or a question you specifically want to ask me, then ask me and I can answer. But I don't, you know, for me to go through, you know, blah, that, then there's no, I don't know, there's no see why or how, you know what I mean? No, someone else's no phone.
Yeah, Mum.
Just trying to. Honestly, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think, and it you know, any words from me, I don't want to tell you. It's not that I don't want to talk to, I just don't want to, I just want to get her like that. Not that, so it's not, I don't want, it's not telling, I just want to just forget about it. Because you know more than anybody does, I know. You know, I hope it's not, I need to make sure, because, you know what I mean, put it this way, life skills. The time it happened, there was a massive load of flood. And there was a load of people, and it would come rushing down, a load of us, really got people, and mate, now I think it's all good. It's all way, it's all done, as far as I don't see, it's not going to come close up, it shouldn't, I don't know.
In another chat, Osmond told Paddy she won't see the light of day again. Don't you worry about that. At one point, he even bragged that there was nothing else that police would find, that he'd beaten any possible charges. They shouldn't ever have to question me again, he said. Regardless of what Osmond might have said and thought about getting away with it, police now didn't even need to question him again, because they had hours and hours of recordings, and soon they'd have even more. To understand why Claire Holland was targeted, you have to look back at her relationship with Darren. It was chaotic, alcohol-fueled, and unstable. They met whilst working at a cafe, and Claire then became pregnant about a year in. According to Osmond, the news caught him off guard. They then moved into a house in Bradley Stoke and tried to start a life, but it wasn't to last. Osmond claimed that Claire drank during the pregnancy. He said that she was often drunk when he came home from work. Things within that home were not good.
I got back from work and there was 3 empty bottles of wine in the kitchen, and I went upstairs. Obviously, she woke up whilst I came in, trying to make out she was doing something. So she picked up and was starting to try and come down the stairs towards me. Where the do you think you're going with the baby? And she said, "Oh, I'm making him his milk." So I said, you don't need to take him down the stairs to do that. Oh no, you can't take my... Listen to me now, right? mate, I was just, it was just like, I don't know, mate, it's horrible to say, but it was like rugby. And if someone's got the ball and they're doing that, I just get my arm and I go in between here. You know, and it was the same thing, I just went like that. It's like, no, right, that's mine. Right? Same rugby. Disappear, get out of and she wouldn't, so like I said, I did. I sorry out the room, shut the door, I told her to take the milk and bring it back up here. She that's whatever happens.
Social services then removed the baby and placed him into foster care. From that moment on, Osmond blamed Claire for everything. In his mind, she was the reason why he'd lost his son. He told more than one person that no one was going to keep him away from his child. Claire then disappeared just 2 years later. When Osmond was asked why he would do this to his ex-partner, he allegedly replied, "Because of the kid, she kept me away from my boy." In October of 2023, 11 years after Claire Holland vanished, Darren Osmond finally stood trial at Bristol Crown Court. He was now 41 years old. The prosecution laid out the case piece by piece. The 6 confessions, the 999 call, the undercover recordings, the self-admitted motive. They played audio from the van where Osmond detailed everything that he'd done to Claire, how he disposed of and dumped her body. They introduced evidence that Osmond had previously become physical against Claire, pushing her down the stairs during a drunken argument. They showed that he had a pattern of blaming her for their child being taken away. They read out a statement from a colleague that Osmond once confided in years earlier. "I did kill her, you know. I killed my ex. I strangled her. I threw her into the river." Osmond's defense? He said that he didn't do it. That all the things he'd said were just drunken ramblings of a bragger. In fact, he called himself a drunken idiot. He claimed he was just trying to make himself sound tough, and he insisted that it was all just a work of fiction. But the jury didn't believe his excuses. On December the 11th, 2023, after a tense, weeks-long trial, Darren Osmond was found guilty of the murder of Claire Holland. For Claire's daughter Rosie, the verdict was only part of the closure that she needed. She had had to grow up without a mother. She lived through her teen years with questions that no child should have to carry. And now, even with a conviction, her mother still hadn't been found. There would be no grave, no goodbye. Rosie said that she still remembered the final time that she saw her mother. It was just before school, playing a quick game of Ring-a-Ring-a Roses with her mother and her brother. It had been part of their daily routine, and then she was left with nothing. Rosie then poured herself into athletics and into football, into making her mother proud wherever she was. She missed everything, Rosie said. Her grandchildren, my career, she's missed it all. And somewhere out there, Claire's body still remains undiscovered. On December the 20th, 2023, Darren Osmond returned to court for sentencing. The judge described the case as calculated, cruel, and devastating to a family. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 20 years before becoming eligible for parole. The earliest he could apply for release would be January the 15th, 2044. But in April of 2024, just months after his last conviction, Osmond was already appealing. He wants his sentence reduced. Regardless of what he wants, the investigation remains open in one crucial way. Because until Claire is found, until she is brought home, her family says that they won't stop searching. And for now, there's no body, no grave, no end to this disaster.
Do you know any cases where the person lives after they announced it?
Under the warm glow of the ceiling lights and the weight of everything left unsaid, Adriana Olsen looked into the eyes of her only child. Just seconds earlier, she'd called for help. Her estranged husband was on the way, even though the situation was reportedly calming down. But that was a lie. Her son David sat cross-legged on the floor. He looked at his father, then at her, and then came the blast. In an instant, the family was gone.
What? No! 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 What?
Adriana Olsen was everything her family needed her to be. Born in Brazil and known to her loved ones as Drika, she moved to the US with big dreams and even bigger faith. She built her life around service, both to God and to others. A devout Christian, Adriana split her time between two churches, one for her Brazilian community and another one more local to Pensacola. She was outgoing, vibrant, the kind of woman who would make a stranger feel like family. But no role defined her more than being David's mother. After 5 months on bed rest during a risky pregnancy, she gave birth to her only child, David Allen Feijo Olsen, in 2003. From the moment he arrived, Adriana and her husband Aaron committed their lives to raising their son. They didn't always have that much, but they always had each other. And they worked hard to protect David, because even as a young child, something in him seemed fragile. David had always struggled with emotional regulation, and as he grew older, the issues deepened. There was anxiety, obsessive behaviours, and he really had trouble focusing. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with a range of conditions, such as obsessive-compulsive disorder, ADHD, as well as what's described as a mood disorder. Despite years of effort, nothing seemed to make things truly better. By the time he was a teenager, David spent most of his time at home. He'd never held down a job. He'd never driven a car. His world was small, and it was mainly digital. However, his parents didn't give up. Aaron and Adriana made it their mission to support him, to keep him afloat when everything felt heavy, to help him love himself, even when it seemed he didn't know how. Life wasn't suddenly perfect, and there were outbursts, there were scary moments, but never once did they think he could be dangerous, especially not to them. The Olsens had been married for nearly 20 years, but by early 2022, something between Adriana and Aaron had shifted. In fact, they had separated just 3 weeks before the events in this video. Aaron moved out of the family home on Princeton Drive, and Adriana remained there with David. What you're going to see next is taken from a later police interview with Aaron, and he explains the whole situation better than I ever could.
All right, so I'll speed you up to date. We've been separated for 3 weeks. I could look at a date when she sent me the text, but it's been about 3 weeks now that my wife left, and we haven't had a divorce, but she wants one. I don't want one. Long story short, I had to take a whole week off work. She was gone. She didn't want to come around the house. It was just me, my son, my dogs, and I'm desperately trying to get in touch with her and get her back. She didn't want anything to do. She wanted to leave me, and she said she didn't love me anymore and all that kind of stuff. So then I begged her. I said, come back home, Adriana, please. You've got to be home. I mean, I'll leave the house. Whatever, you've got to be here. My son needs you, the dog needs you, the house needs you. My job, I'm gone. I work 80, 90, 100 hours a week. I'm gone 5-6 days a week. I'm never home. So the last conversation I had was pretty good. I mean, I'm crying. She's not. When I guess she's just, I know she's hurting. But my plans tomorrow are to buy chocolates, buy flowers, whether she tells me to shove them up my backside or keeps them. I've never done stuff like that. I'm trying that. We've been married 20 years.
According to David's own words, his parents' separation shattered his sense of stability. He would later tell deputies that his life had fallen apart when his parents split. In his eyes, the divorce wasn't just a breakup, it was actually an abandonment. He began obsessing over it, spiraling deeper into intrusive thoughts. He became convinced that his mother no longer loved him, that she no longer understood him. He felt that she had lost empathy for him, that she was now cold, and that she was about to leave him behind completely. According to family, David had struggled with mental illness for years, but what wasn't fully understood until it was far too late was just how distorted his thinking had become. In late March of 2022, David started planning to harm someone close to his mother. He later told investigators that he retrieved a shotgun from the family safe, not with the intent to harm his mother, but to target one of her friends. He never went through with it. In fact, he didn't even leave the driveway. But the thought of using weapons had now entered the picture, and the line between David's thoughts and his physical actions had really started to blur. By the end of the first week of April, the pressure inside the house had reached a boiling point. Adriana reportedly called Aaron multiple times, telling him their son was acting out. She mentioned the shotgun, but the details were hazy. She told him things were calming down, that it was okay, but in reality, it wasn't, because something within David had changed now, and his world, his reality, was no longer anchored by logic, love, or even fear. It was now driven by paranoia and rage. All of that, combined with the sense that someone had to pay for how much he was hurting, was a dangerous combination. It was just after midnight when the final argument began. David had been home all day. Adriana had been out. When she finally returned, something between them ignited once again. David later told investigators that she now seemed very cold towards him. The shouting escalated, but like so many times before, it passed. David said things had calmed down. He even claimed that the firearm, which he had once more obtained, was now unloaded. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor in the living room when his father, Aaron, now walked through the front door. Adriana stood nearby. And in that moment, whether they believed he was calm or not, David made a fateful decision. He reached for the weapon, loaded a single round into the chamber, and pointed it at his father. Then, just as quickly, he turned the barrel towards his mother. Father Aaron shouted and rushed forwards, but it was too late. David pulled the trigger. A single blast struck Adriana in the abdomen. She collapsed, and the weapon clattered to the floor. Aaron then seized it, took it outside, and locked it in his truck before calling 911. When police arrived, they would find him exactly as his father had described, cooperative and almost detached. To give you an even better idea of exactly how this happened, here are the words of eyewitness and father Aaron.
You got the call from her? Yeah. And then I headed over there. The minute I got there, I walked in the house. She was, let me see your pen. Here's the front door. Here's a couch here, a couch there. My son was sitting Indian style there. She was standing right there. I walked in right there. I was standing right there. I'm like, what is going on? My son was sitting Indian style. She was standing there with her arms crossed. And I'm like, what is going on, guys? What is going on? And it all happened so fast. And then she was like, what did she even say? It had kind of chilled out, and I was like, David, what is going on, dude? And I guess he was talking about hurting himself or something. And then he gets up, and I don't know if he had the gun when he got up or if he went and got it. I just know that I'm standing there, my wife's standing there. He kind of walked over here, and then when I look, he's got the gun in his hands. And then he just kind of was like moving around with it like this, and I said, David, and then it went off.
Okay.
He was just kind of he was like, you know, oh my God. She was there and he was there, and I'm kind of just walked in the house, and I'm like, what's going on, guys? What's going on? Like I said, he gets up, he goes that way, and then I see he's got the gun in his hand, and he's kind of just moving it around. And I was like, David, whoa, dude, what are you doing? And then he kind of waved it around, and he looked at her, and he fired the trigger.
Adriana was rushed to the hospital, but despite emergency surgery, she did not survive. The woman who had once spent 5 months on bed rest just to bring David into the world was now gone, and it was at his hands. The only person present in that moment who didn't seem to grasp the gravity of what had just happened was David himself. Incredibly, the moment that Aaron was told his wife hadn't pulled through was captured on police video during his interview. It's pretty tough going, but here it is.
Hello? Yes, this is Aaron Olson. Yes, that's my wife. Adriana Olson, she's my wife. What? No! Dad, keep praying. A miracle can happen. A miracle can happen, Dad. Keep praying. Keep praying. Oh my God. Oh my God. What? No, 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 no. Please. Please, please, please. 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 Oh my God. Please, dude, there's nothing you can do? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Can you let my son in here?
Yeah.
Oh my God, 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 oh my God. Please tell me there's nothing you can do? David, she's gone.
I killed her.
David.
I killed her.
David, stop, 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 stop.
No, 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 no.
Wait a minute, man, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Pray, keep praying.
I'm praying, I'm praying, I'm praying, I'm praying, I'm praying.
Aaron had seen a lot in his life, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened that night. He and Adriana had built a life from scratch. They met in Pensacola, fell fast in love, and married just months after meeting. Over the years, up until the end, they raised David as a team. They were committed, hands-on, and always trying to hold things together. And even as their marriage began to fray, their shared concern and care for David kept them connected. Aaron had spent the previous 3 weeks living with relatives after the separation, but when Adriana called and said their son was acting out, without a second thought, he got in his truck and drove to the home. He was still the dad and still the partner that he always was. David was taken into custody at the scene without resistance. Inside the interrogation room, he began to talk. He shared how he'd been angry, how cold his mother had seemed, how he believed she was planning to leave his life for good. He admitted to retrieving the firearm earlier in the day, intending at first to harm someone else, but when that plan fell apart, he brought the weapon back into the house. He said he pointed it at himself, then his father, then his mother.
I wish I could forget about what I did.
I understand. And I'm so sorry, but here, sit over here, buddy.
Don't be sorry, it's my fault. I won't accept whatever happens.
David, just, you got no choice on that.
Look,
Stop all that.
here's the deal. And I'm just going to lay this out so everybody's clear. You're not under arrest, you're not under arrest. Both of you are free to leave at any time, okay? You guys can walk out of here. We're just trying to sort out what happened with your mom and try to figure out what happened tonight. So, right now, nobody's under arrest, just so we're clear. Is everybody clear on that? Okay. We're just trying to find out what happened, okay? So, kind of help me understand. Just walk me through what happened tonight.
Okay. I got nothing to hide.
Okay.
David, just talk to the man.
I'm gonna talk. I'm just gonna open up. I'm gonna say things how it is.
Okay, that's fine, David. That's fine.
That's great. That's what we want.
Just your mom would want you to be honest.
Absolutely.
Regardless of whether I killed her or not, I just lost my mom.
Absolutely.
For one thing, we are going through a tough time. He has watched me suffer. He has watched his mother suffer.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, before she left, before we had a problem, he was doing great.
Mm-hmm.
They had a discussion.
It was great.
They had a discussion about leaving me. And I was betrayed and upset with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
My son seen how I suffered, and he realized it's not what he thought. He just wanted peace in the house. He's right here fixing to graduate.
Where you go to school?
Pine Forest.
Okay.
There has been a lot of pain the last 3 weeks. My son has seen me crying every day that I talk to him. Okay. Just begging, saying, David, I just want to come home. I just want to be with my family. I just want my family back. And I've been talking to David every day. How's your mom doing? How's everything going with your mom? I don't want y'all to fight. I want everything to be good. Man, here's conversations that I've had with my son.
Oh my God, I rolled with her downtown.
I
rolled with her downtown yesterday. We had a good time the last time.
This goes
on. What'd you guys do?
It was nice to me for once.
Tonight?
Yesterday. We drove around downtown. I don't know if that was God saying, this is the last time you're going to be with your mom.
Did you guys go anywhere specific?
Let's see. We were just driving around, and I was trying to be on good terms. I've been trying to stay strong. I'm not going to victimize myself, but I was a long time ago.
My son's got a lot of psychological.
I'm not crazy though, so it's my fault.
Okay. So what happened tonight then?
I'll explain. Just give me some time, okay? I just need to breathe.
Okay.
Because it's not fun to think about what led up to the situation.
Oh,
what is today?
I understand.
Today is 7th, 8th.
I'm trying to see.
The 8th.
Hang on a minute.
Our life was, for once, together. And then my mom dies 3 weeks later because of me. Imagine that. 3 weeks later, right after everything goes back together, you kill your mom.
What do you mean?
And you love your mom.
Of course you do. What do you mean everything goes back together? Help me understand what you mean by that.
I've been having psychological problems. I wasn't a vegetable, but I was able to do things, and I decided to go, you know what? Screw it. Even though I got all these mental illnesses, I'm not crazy. I can do things.
Sure.
And I decided to take a step. And I'm getting a car. I'm about to get a job.
Okay, wow.
And I was going to go to college. My mom was there. Everything was good. And the day after everything went back together, at least I thought it went back together. It probably didn't go back together. My mom comes to me, and she's like, can we keep a secret? And I was like, I'm about to divorce her dad, and I know he loves her, but they've been arguing, and all I've seen with them is arguing. So I thought they didn't love each other. I thought it was going to be better that way.
This is the...
I was on the floor with a shotgun. And I pointed the gun at her. I was nervous because I was thinking to myself, damn, you try to play big boy for once. You try to actually, you trusted yourself with a shotgun, and now dad's coming back home, and he's about to take that gun away, and you're just going to go back to being that.
That was your mentality?
Not when I shot her, but that's what got me nervous.
I wasn't even coming for any of that. I was coming home to bring peace.
We'll talk about that later. We're talking to these people. He came in the house, and I was so nervous. But, I still had really bad outbursts. I've had a psychologist, I've had a psychiatrist. But, one thing I always trusted myself with, one thing that, because I've always worried about this day. One thing I've worried was, one thing I've always trusted myself was, you can control yourself, David. And that's what the one thing I had faith in. That's the one thing I held on to. That's the one time I actually put my own backbone on. I don't understand I could control myself. I could have done it.
I can't even talk anyway.
No matter what intrusive thoughts come in my head, no matter how angry I am, no matter whenever I'm angry, my intrusive thoughts, you can still go. That's crazy. That's childish. That's what I did, was childish. I was angry, and I started talking about, because when he got in the house, I got so heated, because I wasn't expecting it to be between me and her. And then I got heated, so I started bringing up all the messed up stuff she said to me. I was pointing the gun around. I pointed it at Dad, because they were going to get the gun. I turned around, bop.
I wasn't getting anything, David. I just was there.
And you were walking towards me to grab the shotgun.
No, right. Once I realized you had it. But I didn't know I wasn't there for it. I didn't know what was going on. I was trying to keep peace, man. I just woke up and drove straight over there. When I noticed you had a gun and you were waving it around, yes, I did. I was like, David, what are you doing? And
I was looking forward for all three of us to at least be together so we can have my graduation. So I can still have my mom with me.
I was going to buy chocolates and flowers. That's my whole plan for tomorrow.
I had no right to shoot her over words, David told them. Of all the people I planned to shoot, I didn't expect it to be her. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office charged David with second-degree murder with a firearm. His bond was denied, and at just 18 years old, David Allen Olson was booked into the Escambia County Jail. From the beginning, everyone involved agreed on one thing. David Olson was not a typical defendant. By all accounts, he had never been violent before. He'd never been in trouble with the law. His record was clean, but that didn't mean he wasn't living with some problems. In the months after the event, David underwent multiple psychological evaluations. The findings were disturbing, even for seasoned professionals. Dr. Stephen Zeman, a psychologist who evaluated David, testified that he had the most severe case of obsessive-compulsive disorder that he had ever seen. But OCD was only one piece of the puzzle. David also struggled with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, with anxiety, mood instability, and what the court called severely impaired mental processes. It seemed that David lived in a state of constant mental noise. There was intrusive thoughts, irrational fears, emotional dysregulation. This didn't just sound like mental illness. It sounded like an electrical storm firing through his brain, and for years it had gone largely unchecked. David's attorney, Sharon Wilson, filed a formal notice of intent to pursue an insanity defense. She agreed that David had no grip on reality at the time of the event, that his mind was fragmented beyond functioning. She claimed his cognitive, emotional, and behavioral controls were so impaired that he should not be held criminally responsible. The prosecution, however, disagreed, and critically, so did Dr. Zeman. Despite recognizing the depth of David's suffering, Zeman concluded that David did not meet the legal definition of insanity. He said that David's illness likely contributed to the event, yes, but it didn't completely strip him of his ability to distinguish right from wrong. This was a brutal line to draw. David was not well, that much was clear, but in the eyes of the law, not being well isn't the same as being legally insane. And that distinction would determine whether David spent his future in a hospital or in a prison. The case moved towards a trial in early 2023. The original charge, second-degree murder with a firearm, carried the possibility of life in prison. David had pleaded not guilty. His team still planned to argue that he was legally insane at the time of the event, but as that trial date approached, something shifted. On May the 17th, 2023, David Olson stood before Circuit Court Judge John Simon and pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of manslaughter with a weapon. It was a plea deal, and in exchange, the state dropped the murder charge. So instead of facing a life sentence, David now faced a maximum of 30 years, with a much lower minimum. The judge ordered a pre-sentencing investigation. Everyone in that courtroom understood what was at stake. At the sentencing hearing, both attorneys presented their final arguments. The prosecutor, Trey Myers, acknowledged David's struggles. However, he made it clear, saying this was a killing that was not necessary. It was not justifiable, and it was not excusable. He urged the court to deliver a sentence that reflected the weight of the crime, and to do so even if David was a sympathetic person. David's attorney argued that he wasn't asking for pity, only for understanding. She told the court that David had never known a normal life, that his disorders were not an excuse, but a context, that his remorse was real. When it was David's turn to speak, he looked at the judge and said, "I know I need help. I've always known I needed help. I'm very sorry that happened. It is my fault." And then his father took the stand. Aaron Olson, speaking through tears, told the court, "He is my only child. I love my son, and I'm proud of him. I just wanted him to love himself." Adriana Olsen was remembered with music, scripture, and tears. At her homegoing celebration, her loved ones spoke in both English and Portuguese. They honoured the life of a woman who crossed continents to build her family. Friends described her as a beam of light, a loving mother, a faithful servant of God. Her sister flew in from Brazil to speak on behalf of the family. She spoke of their grief, their faith, and their memories of Drika. Husband Aaron took the podium too, and even through the pain, he shared how they met, how they built their life, and just how deeply they both loved David. There's no easy way to explain what happened in that house on Princeton Drive. There's no single diagnosis. There's no clean and perfect answer. There were just two parents trying their hardest, and one son who seemed to break. And in spite of what happened, it does seem that that family loved each other right up until the moment that what happened. On June 28, 2023, Circuit Judge John Simon handed down the sentence. David Olsen would serve 124.5 months, which is just over 10 years, in the Florida Department of Corrections. After that, he would spend 2 years under community control, and then another 15 years on probation. The sentence reflected a tragic middle ground. It was far from the maximum, but it was also not the lightest punishment available. David was transferred to Wakulla Correctional Institution Annex in Crawfordville, Florida. That's a catchy name. A minimum security facility. His projected release date is February 12, 2032. He will be just 29 years old. For now, he lives behind locked doors, no longer in the bedroom his mother once decorated, or at the home where everything fell apart. Father Aaron still posts occasionally on social media. He'll share photos of David as a boy, tributes to Adriana, and raw expressions of grief. Send some help down from above, he wrote in one caption to Adriana. Our boy needs us. There's no real closure here, no such thing as a victory for either side. It's one of those cases where there's just loss.
Did you at any point think to stop?
I did for a split second, because I realised what I was doing was wrong, but then I kind of decided to carry on.
Annette Smith lived in a quiet, self-contained flat, nestled within Fairfield Hall, a striking Victorian building near the Bedfordshire village of Stotfold. It had once been an asylum, but over the years, the building had been beautifully converted into housing. It mainly attracted retirees, professionals, and people like Annette, independent, sociable, and quietly elegant. At 74 years old, Annette still hosted the occasional dinner party. She enjoyed a good crossword. She liked gardening in her shared courtyard, and was known for her carefully ironed cardigans and silver blonde hair. She wasn't wealthy, but she was generous with what she had. Over the years, she'd built a small but meaningful circle of close friends, some of them from her walking group and others from church. She still spoke regularly with her stepson Jason, and she exchanged holiday messages with cousins and family further afield. Jason's father was a man named Peter Smith, and that's who Annette was married to until their separation in 2004, but they still all remained a presence in each other's lives. In fact, they jointly owned the flat, and though they'd both moved on romantically, they kept things practical and polite, and they even did in fact stay legally married too. But time was starting to take its toll on Annette. In 2018, Annette suffered a stroke. It didn't rob her of her speech or independence entirely, but it left her physically slower, her right-hand side weaker, and her confidence now more fragile. Annette Smith had always taken pride in her independence. She cooked her own meals, paid her own bills, and kept a tidy, peaceful home. But that independence was slipping away. Her mobility was now affected, and tasks that once took minutes now took hours. Climbing stairs left her winded. She was reluctant to drive, and that's when she invited someone new into her home, someone she trusted. It was a man she called a gentle giant. His name was Scott Patterson, and on the surface at least, he seemed like the perfect housemate. So when Scott offered to help with errands, it just made sense. They initially met at the pub restaurant where he worked. Scott Patterson was hard to miss. He was tall, broad shoulders, and always polite. Annette introduced him to the community as a friend from years back, someone who'd fallen on hard times after a relationship had ended. She'd offered him a spare room rent-free in exchange for some help around the house and a bit of companionship. It sounded like a good arrangement, fair and kind. And at first, he was a real godsend. He remembered to put the bins out. He handled online orders. He came across as soft-spoken and helpful. He often picked up groceries for Annette, and he'd run errands, doing things like picking up her prescriptions from the chemist. He helped Annette into the bath, and made sure that her towels were warm. The two of them even went on short holidays together. They had meals out. They even sent joint Christmas cards. He was always around, but never overbearing, just steady and reliable. Behind the scenes, he had found work at a nearby farm shop, where he was positioned on the deli and butcher's counter, and it was there, years before anyone would piece the full story together, that he enrolled in a butchery course. At the time, this just seemed like a practical skill for someone working behind a meat counter, but no one suspected that it would become, well, something else. At home, Scott was attentive. He washed Annette's clothes, he cleaned the kitchen, and he'd change her bedsheets. But slowly, subtly, her stepson Jason began to notice changes. The house wasn't being looked after quite the way that it had been, and Annette herself was becoming more withdrawn, less sparkly, less Annette. Jason worried, but from the outside, nothing looked obviously wrong. Not yet, anyway. But strokes can do more than just slow the body down. They can wear away at someone's confidence. And Annette, once a lively, quick-witted woman with a sharp tongue and a great taste in wine, now became gentler and altogether quieter. Scott began handling more and more for her, and somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like an equal partnership. She now leaned on him heavily. In fact, she relied on him, and maybe more than she realized. To the outside world, nothing really appeared wrong, but those closest to her sensed that she wasn't quite herself anymore. And then in early November of 2023, Annette seemed to fall off the map completely. The last confirmed sighting of Annette Smith came around the 8th of November. A neighbour remembered seeing her through the window that week. Another thought she'd waved to them from the front door. But then, nothing. No calls, no texts, no social media, no lunches with friends. Jason, her stepson, tried to reach out to her. He assumed that she was just busy. But as the weeks ticked on, something felt off. And around mid-December, Christmas cards began arriving from Annette. They were pretty much addressed in her usual tone, but something was slightly wrong. There were too many kisses at the end of the message, and it didn't quite seem like her usual phrasing. And then came the emails. They were brief and almost robotic. In fact, one relative actually said that it felt like a robot had written it. But no one pushed harder for answers just yet. Not until the new year. Annette's ex-partner Peter, still listed as co-owner of the property, showed up unannounced. He let himself in, and whilst inside, he found Annette's purse. The kettle had water in it, the fridge had food. It looked like someone had just stepped out and never returned. Peter contacted the police, but the initial response was lukewarm. Annette, after all, was an adult, and maybe she just left by choice. Peter wasn't the only person who was getting suspicious though. Annette's family had learned to just accept some of her quirks over the years. She wasn't one to overshare, and sometimes she'd go quiet for a week or two, but disappearing for months, that was not Annette. And those emails, they were sure they just weren't written by her, and there were no real updates. There were no mentions of the garden or the neighbours. They were just short, polite, nondescript messages, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. I just have to quickly preface this next section, but in the UK we have a service called Moonpig, where you can go online or use the app, type in a message you want to have in a birthday card, Christmas card, whatever it may be. Then it will get printed off and sent to the person's house. And no, before you say, that wasn't an ad. Kinda wish it was, but it's not. But to Annette's loved ones, the Moonpig cards felt even stranger. There was no handwriting, only printed messages. The designs were generic. There was no personal touch or real signs of Annette. But still, there they were, showing up like clockwork. So it was possible that she was indeed okay, but she was just hiding and didn't want anyone to see her. Stepson Jason kept on calling, and Scott kept on answering. He kept telling Jason that she'd gone away for a bit, that she needed a break, and that she was with a friend. However, he couldn't say where she'd gone, or which friend she'd gone with. All of this was just far too vague. Then came a final email on New Year's Day. It said Annette was thinking of everyone and would be back in touch soon. That was the final straw. Jason had now seen enough. He wasn't sure what was going on, but something was definitely wrong. This wasn't just someone ignoring calls. This wasn't just someone changing the way they sent a birthday card. This felt like someone pretending to be Annette. Peter Smith too was tired of waiting. He and Annette may have gone their separate ways, but they still shared financial responsibilities, and emotionally too, he still cared. So he did what the police wouldn't do. He hired help, and a private investigator didn't need long. They walked through Annette's flat with a critical eye. The heating was on low, her slippers were by the bed, a dish was drying in the rack, and everything screamed normalcy, except the silence, and except the lack of Annette. They found her handbag with her wallet still inside. There was a half-completed crossword. Her medications were there, but they hadn't been taken, and nothing about the flat suggested that she'd packed a bag. There were no signs that she'd willingly gone anywhere. That investigator returned to the flat just 2 days later and then quietly told Peter, "This doesn't feel like someone who planned to leave." Then the investigator noticed the emails. Her laptop was still logged in, the emails are open, and he could see that some had been recently sent. And that's when it clicked. Whoever had been sending those messages was doing it from inside this very home. Within hours, police were recontacted, and this time, thankfully, they listened. Annette Smith wasn't just missing, she had completely vanished. She was gone, and the person most eager to explain all of this was about to say something that no one was prepared to hear. Once Bedfordshire police took the case seriously, things moved quickly. Officers returned to Annette's flat, not just for a welfare check this time, but for a full forensic sweep. The place looked tidy on the surface, but when they pulled back a green blanket in the bathroom cupboard, they found a stain. A crimson-red brown stain that shouldn't have been there. They opened the cupboard under the stairs, and in there, something didn't smell right. A cadaver dog was brought in, and a dog immediately positively signalled. But still, there was no body. And without a body, no matter how suspicious things might have looked, it was still difficult to prove that anything had happened at all. Officers questioned Scott once again, but this time far more seriously. He told them the same story that he was telling everyone else. Annette had left, simply taken a break, gone off with a woman in a dark-coloured car. He said that she just needed some time to herself, that she was feeling overwhelmed, she was tired of being checked in on, and he even offered to give a formal statement. But that was when the real cracks began to show, because once the recording started in the interview room, Scott did the unthinkable. Scott Patterson sat under the bright lights, hands folded on the table. He seemed strangely calm, and then, unprompted, he spoke. "I killed someone," he said. "I killed Annette." He went on to describe everything. He told investigators that on November the 8th, he entered her bedroom while she slept and pressed a pillow over her face. Afterwards, he said he panicked. He left her there for hours, and he even talked to her body. He told her things like nothing had happened. Then as the days went on, he began hiding her. Firstly, he put her under the stairs. Then later, when an estate agent came to photograph the property, he moved her once again. This time, he put her into a suitcase. He took that suitcase 3 miles away to a storage facility in Letchworth Garden City, and that's where Annette remained, silently, tragically, whilst her family received cheerful Christmas messages that in fact Scott had written on her behalf. I didn't think they'd find her, he told police. I thought if there was no body, I'd get away with it. I'll play the entire available interview for you because it's really quite bizarre. It's only a couple of minutes and it's definitely worth watching.
Are you responsible for the death of Annette Smith?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Tell me what's happened.
I suffocated her in her bed with a pillow.
Okay. When was this?
The 8th of November.
Tell me in as much detail as you can what happened that day. So start wherever you need to start, but I need as much detail as you can give me. Take your time.
Well, it happened in the evening, at night, after Annette had fallen asleep. And yeah, I put a pillow over her face until she stopped breathing, and I left her in bed for the night.
What was going through your mind that day?
I just wanted to get out of the situation. And as I say, in hindsight, there are obviously better ways to have done that, but it just felt I don't know, just felt when I sort of snapped, I suppose, it just felt like what I should do.
And at what point did you decide to do that? You said it's been a build-up.
Yeah, I think I had thought about it for a little while beforehand.
Mm-hmm. When you say a little while, what does that mean to you?
Maybe a few weeks.
Okay.
Is that what you had been thinking for a few weeks?
Yeah.
Or were you thinking of other ways as well?
No, that was what I was thinking.
When you were suffocating her, did you at any point think to stop?
I did for a split second, because I realised what I was doing was wrong. But then I kind of thought, I wasn't sure. I don't know, I just decided to carry on.
Why did you go to those lengths to do that?
To dispose of the body?
Yeah.
Because I thought if there wasn't a body, I'd get away with it.
Guided by Scott's confession, officers made their way to the storage facility in Letchworth Garden City. The staff at the unit had no idea just what they were about to uncover. Scott had even rented the space using his own name. There was no fake ID, no aliases, and he hadn't even considered the fact that CCTV recorded everything. When police opened up the locker, the smell was unmistakable. Inside a black suitcase, wrapped in layers of plastic and green blankets. Carefully, investigators worked through the scene. Annette's remains had been completely disassembled. Scott later admitted that he used tools from the farm shop where he worked, including a saw and a sharp kitchen implement. Of course, years before, he'd taken that butchery course, and now he'd applied it to something completely unthinkable. He'd wrapped Annette's body in bags, towels and tape. The torso had been hidden in a suitcase, and other remains were found separately stored. This deception had been thorough, but not careful. There were digital records, physical evidence, and ultimately, Scott's own words all pointed to one horrifying truth. For nearly 2 months, he'd gone about his life. He'd even sold Annette's jewellery online, pocketing over £5,000. He sent emails from her account, he posted Christmas cards in her name, and he told their neighbours that she'd simply gone away. All of this while she remained locked in the container, just 3 miles away from the home that they once shared. At Luton Crown Court, Scott Patterson pleaded guilty to the murder of Annette Smith. He offered no excuses, just a string of quiet and calm admissions, along with a chilling moment when he said he'd thought about doing this twice before. Each time he said he'd stood at her bedroom door, but instead decided to walk away, until the night that he didn't. The judge described him as cold and calculated, a man who took advantage of a position of deep trust, a man who violated the home of someone who had once saved him from homelessness. She had fed him, cared for him, let him into her life, a life that he took away. The court heard from stepson Jason Smith. He said that he'd never forgive Scott for what he'd done. Ex-partner Peter Smith said the pain was still unfolding, like a bad dream that never ends. Scott Patterson was sentenced to life in prison, but there he must serve a minimum of 20 years before he becomes eligible for parole. Annette's family is understandably still in disbelief, and they released this short tribute. She was beautiful, caring, and trusting. She gave love freely. We are shattered by what's happened. The house on Paul Street was eerily quiet. Inside, the walls normally held the laughter of 3 young children, but this was now replaced with silence. When officers arrived just after 11 p.m, they found a man sitting in the middle of the road. His long hair was loose, his face was slack with confusion, and as police ordered him to the ground, he simply said, "I'm surrendering." Inside the house, the scene that waited for officers was almost too much to process. Even hardened police investigators recoiled at the sight. The man, then taken into questioning by police, whispered 5 words in disbelief.
This is real, isn't it?
Cinnamon Bell grew up in a big, lively family. She was in fact one of 9 siblings. Her brother Luke remembered her as a kid who was always smiling. Every childhood photo, every early memory, pure light. As an adult, that spark never faded either. Even when life threw obstacle after obstacle in her path, Cinnamon fought for a better future. She wasn't just working to survive, she had dreams. She was raising 3 young children, and she was doing it almost single-handedly. Cinnamon had big plans too. She wanted to study medicine and to specialise in healthcare, and to help her immunocompromised daughter to live a full life. Limited resources never stopped her. Support wasn't always easy to find, but Cinnamon still made sure that her kids felt loved, safe, and hopeful about their future too. Friends described her as loyal, generous, and stubbornly optimistic, the kind of person who would give away her final dollar if someone else needed it more. But she didn't just want to survive any longer. She wanted to thrive for her children. And on her final night, she was already enrolled in a medical course, and she was just days away from starting. But all of that promise, all of that fight for more, would be put to an end before she could truly flourish. Cody James Edwards didn't have that same kind of glow around him. His past was marked by instability, by substance use, and a growing sense of paranoia. By the time he met Cinnamon Bell, Cody was already a heavy user of hallucinogens. He had a particular history with a substance called DOI, a substance which is often missold as that classic substance that hippies used to trip on in the 60s, and well, they probably do today as well. But this wasn't the kind of thing that made you giggly or mellow. Instead, it was notorious for triggering paranoia or even full-blown psychotic episodes. And Cody knew this. He'd used it before and he'd felt this before. But even knowing the risks, he continued using. When he and Cinnamon first got together, friends say that there was a hopeful period. It was brief, but it was real. Both of them were trying to move forward in their life. Both had baggage and both wanted better. But cracks started to show early on. There were arguments, there was growing tension, and there was substance use that only deepened Cody's volatility. The happy home that Cinnamon wanted to build was crumbling from the inside, and nobody, not even she herself, could have predicted just how it would all collapse. At first glance, Cinnamon and Cody might have seemed like an ordinary couple, just two young people trying to rebuild. Behind closed doors, however, the cracks had started to form almost immediately. Friends later said that there were arguments, and sometimes these were even loud enough for neighbours to overhear. But it was nothing too extreme at first, nothing that immediately screamed danger. But those closest to Cinnamon noticed that she was withdrawing. There started to be missed phone calls. There were plans being cancelled at the last minute. There were moments where her bright spirit seemed dulled, as if she were carrying something too heavy to name. There were also concerns about Cody's substance use, and his reliance on hallucinogens, especially DOI, was now spiralling. The Cody that Cinnamon fell for wasn't always the man standing in front of her, not anymore. But still, she stayed. Maybe she hoped that he would change. Maybe she believed that love could still fix this situation. Or maybe she understood how quickly substance-fueled paranoia could turn into something catastrophic. March the 12th, 2022 started like any other night, but it would end with heartbreak so profound it would shatter an entire community. Cinnamon and Cody had both taken DOI that evening, and at some point, Cody slipped into what experts would later describe as a full-blown paranoia psychosis. In his mind, Cinnamon wasn't his partner anymore. Instead, she was an imagined threat. She was someone that he believed wanted to hurt him. And inside her modest Paul Street home, what began as an argument quickly spiraled out of control. Cody grabbed a metal dumbbell bar and he struck Cinnamon, not once, but over and over. The left side of her head was crushed under the force. She fell to the bedroom floor, likely unconscious. But it didn't stop there. Cody continued the beating. Cinnamon's time on this earth came to an end. But even though she was no longer breathing, Cody got a sharp implement and used it 5 times on Cinnamon's back. And then there was silence. Cody stumbled outside, disorientated. Neighbours would later recall a strange sight, a young man wandering aimlessly in the street, as if he was waking from a nightmare that he couldn't escape, and his behaviour was bizarre enough for onlookers to call the police. The officers who responded to Paul Street that night were wearing body cams. The footage shows them pulling up outside Cinnamon's house. They spot Cody first, sitting on the ground, blank-faced, with red on his clothes. Get on the floor, get on the ground. The officers' voices are sharp, cutting through the eerie silence. Cody doesn't run though, he doesn't argue. He lies down slowly and says, almost dreamlike,
"I'm surrendering."
Inside the house, officers move quickly, and then they stop. One officer can be heard swearing under his breath. The scene they found was worse than anything they had been prepared for. Meanwhile, Cody was loaded into the back of a police van and was taken to the Mount Gambier police station. There, a video-recorded interview captured what little coherence he had left. He sat slumped at a table, face pale, eyes glazed. When officers asked what he had taken, Cody mumbled, LSD. As the questions continued, the weight of what he'd done seemed to finally crash down on him. He buried his head in his arms. He banged his forehead against the table, groaning.
This is real, isn't it?
At that moment, any lingering haze of the substance-induced psychosis must have lifted, and now only the grim reality remained. Word of Cinnamon's end spread fast through Millicent, a tight-knit town where everyone knew everyone. This meant that the shock ran deep. Police cordoned off Paul Street for days, combing through the home for evidence. Major crime detectives and forensics teams were flown in from Adelaide.
Honestly, I'm just disgusted and heartbroken because I knew like both of them, her children came first no matter what. And she loved them like no tomorrow.
Friends say he'd moved in with Cinnamon about a month ago. The house is now a murder scene.
Neighbours to the house were horrified. Many had seen Cinnamon just hours before her end, sitting on her front steps, chatting with a friend and laughing. But by morning, her home was a crime scene. Superintendent Campbell Hill described the community's reaction as shock and grief on a devastating scale. Millicent wasn't a place where things like this happened, and certainly not to someone like Cinnamon, a young mum just trying to build a better life. Her 3 children, aged 6, 4 and 3, had been staying with their grandmother on that night, and they were still small enough to believe that they were simply on a fun sleepover, and for a little while longer they could be shielded from the truth. But the damage had been done, and the ripples were only just beginning. When Cody Edwards first faced court, he pleaded not guilty to murder. The trial began in the Supreme Court, sitting in Mount Gambier, with a judge, not a jury, presiding. From the beginning, his defense team made their strategy clear. They argued that Cody had experienced a substance-fueled psychotic break, that he genuinely believed that Cinnamon was trying to harm him, and that, in that moment, he acted out of self-defense. The Crown, however, pushed back hard. They pointed to the sheer brutality of the attack. After all, there were over 50 injuries. There was blunt force trauma so severe it crushed the back of the skull, as well as the usage of the sharp implement after Cinnamon had already stopped moving. The Crown argued that this wasn't reasonable, proportional, or remotely excusable. Midway through the trial, Cody was rearraigned. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and the prosecution accepted the plea. The courtroom reaction was immediate. Members of Cinnamon's family, who had sat through every graphic detail of the case, walked out. Some left in tears, others shook their heads in disbelief. Outside the courthouse, her sister, Shenta Bell, called the plea deal a betrayal. It was all about him, she said bitterly. What about what she went through? Inside, the trial pivoted into sentencing submissions, and the outrage only grew louder. Victim impact statements were read aloud in court, and each word was sharp, raw, and impossible to ignore. Cinnamon's mother, Rosemary, spoke about the unimaginable task of caring for 3 grieving young kids. And I'll warn you, this really is heartbreaking. Children who still said, "I love you, Mummy," every day, not fully understanding that their mother was never coming back. Her son, now 8, sometimes woke up sobbing because he couldn't remember the sound of his mother's voice. Her daughter, 6, refused to look in the mirror because the reflection reminded her too much of Cinnamon. The youngest, just 4, talked to her mother's photo after school every single day. They received a life sentence of loss and grief, Rosemary said, while the man who did this will walk free in a few years. How does that make sense? Cinnamon's sister Brenda also wrote to the court. She reminded Judge Kimber that this was not just a tragic accident or an unfortunate misunderstanding. Instead, it was a brutal event that left lifelong effects on many people. The courtroom was heavy with emotion. Even seasoned court staff struggled to keep composure. Cody sat through it all, silent. At one point, though, he read an apology letter out loud. He said that he would be haunted by what he'd done. But by then, most of Cinnamon's family had already walked out, unwilling to hear another word. When sentencing day arrived, emotions were raw. Justice Adam Kimber described Cody's attack on Cinnamon as brutal and devastating. He said that Cody's voluntary use of DOI, knowing its effects on him, made his moral culpability even higher. However, because of the accepted manslaughter plea, Cody's sentence now had limits that the court couldn't change. He was sentenced to just 11 years in prison, and he had a non-parole period of 8 years and 10 months. His time was backdated to his arrest on March 12, 2022, meaning that Cody could be eligible for release as early as January 2031. As the sentence was read out, supporters of Cinnamon's family stood up and stormed out of the court once more. Some shouted at Cody as he was led away. Outside, Cinnamon's sister Shenta called it a spit in her face. They made it all about him, she said. What about her? What about her kids? But something did change. Public outrage led by Cinnamon's family and friends sparked political action. South Australia's Attorney General, Kyan Mayer, announced that the government would introduce new laws that would prevent people from using substance-induced psychosis as a way to lessen their responsibility for their crimes. The laws as they currently stand do not meet community expectations, he said. Drafting of the law began almost immediately, and the movement that Cinnamon's family started may one day save others from facing the same injustice. Madison Middleton was born on the 5th of October 2006 in Mountain View, California, United States. The kind and funny girl was born to Michael Middleton and Laura Jordan. She was also adored and loved by Dan Middleton, her grandfather. Madison, or Maddie as she was normally known, stood out with her cheeky smile, freckled face, and was known as a happy child, free and full of life. She moved to Santa Cruz with her parents, a move that seemed to be best for the family, but instead it would see them sharing an apartment complex with a real-life monster. Santa Cruz is a beautiful city on the central California coast. It has a long wharf, eateries and restaurants, and shops that stretch into the Monterey Bay. With a population of around 65,000, it has a picturesque beach, along with a boardwalk and vintage fair rides. It's somewhere that tourists love, as well as being a haven for its regular inhabitants. Nothing about Santa Cruz could have prepared anyone for the tragic, ugly incident that happened in 2015. Madison left her home in the apartment building on the 25th of July 2015. Unknowingly to her mother, she hadn't just wandered off. Instead, she had been lured away, but nobody knew where. Mother Laura Jordan quickly realized that Maddie wasn't where she should be. Her heart dropped in her chest. She immediately reported her daughter missing. Police scrambled to locate her alive and well, but everything was not as it seemed. Remember, Maddie hadn't just run away from home. Instead, she had been asked to attend a birthday party at the Tannery Art Center, although she wasn't immediately keen on the idea. After all, stranger danger had been drilled into her to convince her that it would be worth sneaking away from her home. The person had told her that there would be lots of ice cream at a birthday party, an offer that Maddie just couldn't resist. But who was the male that had convinced her to leave the safety of her home? After 5 p.m, Maddie was seen riding a micro-scooter with the male. He looked quite young, probably a teenager, an age gap that if you watch enough of these videos, should make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The male had dark hair and was otherwise unremarkable. Witnesses, along with CCTV, saw Maddie with her long hair pulled to the side in a braid, and she seemed to be enjoying the ride. The male was soon identified as Adrian Gonzalez. To an outsider, he seemed like a normal kid, and there was hardly any trace of a troubled history. So perhaps he was responsible for Maddie leaving her home, but then she ran off and became lost, or was taken by someone else.
What can you tell us about what she was doing out here?
She was riding her brand new scooter. It's a white Razor. She had a black helmet on, she was wearing a purple dress, and she was just happy as could be riding around.
Now, did you check with friends to see if she was with them?
Absolutely. We've searched the entire tannery, door to door. Officers have gone door to door, every loft. We've looked at cameras. We've had search parties all night long.
Is there anyone else? Is there another friend, an adult friend she might have befriended or anything like that?
Not that I can think of at all.
Has she ever done anything?
Nothing. Never. Never. She's never left tannery property. She knows where she's can and cannot be here. She was, in the courtyard where she was supposed to be. She came over here, and that was the last we saw of her on surveillance.
So where do you go? I mean, I just got to ask, how difficult is it knowing that you can't really do anything? I mean, you're doing what you can, but... I
already fell apart. Now I'm just in survival mode. I can't explain how difficult this is. Nobody should have to go through this.
the Tannery Arts Centre, where it was said there would be a birthday party and the ice cream, is where Gonzalez worked as a counsellor, and there he was generally respected among his peers. So what did happen to Maddie? So far this doesn't fully add up. Gonzalez was within eyeshot of the policeman when they started looking for Maddie Middleton after the alert went out. The 15-year-old who had an obsession with yo-yos and writing dark notes was seen consistently around the area of the search. He didn't seem to have any concern that he himself would be suspected, let alone ever be arrested. In fact, he even injected himself into the investigation. He went up to an officer and asked them what they were looking for, or if they had found what they needed to see. It was commonplace to see darker pictures and commentary on his Instagram profile, but he was 15, so perhaps that's not that unusual. However, around the time that Maddie went missing, he would share some ominous posts. He shared a post of the song Mad World by Gary Jules. The song that featured on a 2001 film Donnie Darko was not the cheeriest of songs, and perhaps the film itself was significant. After all, the title character did have dreams surrounding death, and underneath the video were lyrics from the song. They read, "The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had." Gonzalez's obsession with death did seem to run deeper than people otherwise thought, and indeed this post could be seen as both ominous and troubling. 2 days after this post, and 2 days after Maddie was reported missing, her body was sadly discovered. She had been stuffed into a trash bag and discarded as rubbish. The location was in the very same building that she was reported missing from. Adrian Jerry Gonzalez, or AJ as he was otherwise known, was subsequently arrested, much to the shock of local residents. At first, those who knew him dismissed the case as being an intentional murder, saying that it might have been a game that went awfully wrong, but that he wouldn't have done it on purpose. Whatever happened must have happened close to home. Maddie can't have made it very far. We heard that it was possibly a horrible accident, that something went all wrong. Whoever it was young enough to be frightened and tried to hide the scene. The words of local resident Jeannie Cartibiano in a phone interview with the Washington Post. However, details soon surfaced that pointed towards Gonzalez having murderous intent and having planned the kidnap and eventual murder of Maddie. She stood at just 4 feet tall and weighed just 48 pounds. Following the investigation and arrest, Santa Cruz District Attorney Jeff Rosell announced that he was charging Gonzalez as an adult for murder, for kidnapping, and for sexual assault. According to a criminal complaint, Maddie was never taken to the tannery for ice cream. She was at an age where she could have easily trusted anyone, and there was really no reason for her to not believe Gonzalez's intentions were pure. Instead though, she was taken to his apartment, and there he not only tied her up, but took her by surprise, knocking her unconscious to ensure that she didn't cry for help. To help keep her quiet, Gonzalez also used duct tape on her mouth to hold it closed. He then violated her in a prolonged attack. After attempting to manually throttle her, he instead used a sharp implement and dragged it across her neck. Maddie's time on this earth, sadly, came to an end. To show that he was conscious of what he had done and that he wanted to preserve himself, he stuffed her into a waste bag and carried the body down into the communal waste room. After that, without a care in the world, AJ Gonzalez took a picture of himself and posted it to Instagram. Neighbors were surprised and shocked to discover that AJ could be capable of any of this. He had a great reputation at the tannery and was really loved by the people there. A local resident said, "He was our poster child." A neighbor added, "He's just a normal kid who hangs out on the levee with other kids and plays with his yo-yo all day long. He doesn't strike a chord as being a killer." Upon news of the accusations aimed at Gonzalez, his Instagram account was flooded with people attacking him because of his alleged actions. His own posts seemed to be incriminating himself. The account was soon deactivated. Hardly had he disposed of the girl's body than Maddie's mother called the police on Sunday evening. This was revealed as he was caught on camera by a surveillance video. The video of him dumping the body was caught on CCTV, and he even visited the spot twice after officers arrived in search of the girl. He repeatedly asked the police if they were making any progress. Aside from that, Gonzalez kept pestering Sotoro Garcia, another resident, with questions about the search for Maddie's body. Whatever he wanted to achieve was unclear, perhaps some form of gratification, but his lack of genuine emotion just made him a valid suspect in the case. Neighbor Garcia would later worry that Gonzalez kept pestering him and that he seemed to be the only one doing so. There was only one reason for that: he was probably involved. Eventually, when Maddie's body was discovered, AJ Gonzalez was standing close by, watching it all unfold. Although at the time he was charged as an adult, his age meant he would be exempt from the death penalty according to authorities.
Aaron, they started things off by singing happy birthday to Maddie, and family and friends who were there say that they really did feel her presence at that celebration in the park today.
I know that my daughter Madison is looking out for me, and she's here today with everybody celebrating.
The people who knew and loved Madison Middleton got together to celebrate her life.
It's been a really scary summer, so we want to give them some fun.
There was face painting, cuddly animals, and the bounce houses. Lots of fun, but the goal here was a kind of collective healing, getting through an incredibly difficult time together, and the kids responded.
Having fun.
And Maddie's personality was in every detail, from the purple cupcakes, one of her favorite desserts, to this painting, sporting her trademark saying, "You better be qualified."
It was just showing her sassiness and her personality and her humor.
In November of 2017, when the trial began, AJ Gonzalez first pleaded not guilty. There were also some controversies about prosecuting him as an adult, because he was only 15 when he committed the crime. By now, 2 years had passed since that fateful Sunday in July of 2015. In a 2016 California Proposition 57, the law was passed that the judge decides if the accused can be prosecuted as an adult, and in this case, it meant that he cannot be sentenced to death, nor given a sentence that an adult would be handed. Gonzalez was sentenced to juvenile prison, but was moved to an adult facility when he turned 25 in 2024. He must also register as an offender, according to the ruling of Santa Cruz County Superior Judge John Salazar. He added that the Senate Bill 1391 prohibits juveniles from being prosecuted as adults, so this limits the penalties that could be imposed on the offender. There is no way for anyone to understand the profound and absolute pain and grief a family experiences under these circumstances, Judge Salazar said. Before the sentencing on April the 15th, Gonzalez offered an apology of sorts to Maddie's family. In this apology, he said that he hopes one day to earn their forgiveness. These are some of his words. "I understand there is very little I can say after all the pain and suffering I've caused, and my goal is to work on my issues so no one else has to experience what you have endured. That does not make anything easier, it just allows me peace. The alternative could be to hold on to the darkness, but this would only consume my soul. I refuse to poison my soul and existence. Forgiveness is the only path, and I believe that Madison would agree." The Middleton family was not convinced. They believed that Gonzalez was simply looking for leniency and that his appeal should not sway the court in their decision and in their bid to uphold justice. People who are following the case disapprove of the judgment which sought to free Gonzalez when he turns 25, as they recognize that there are loopholes in such laws. A Reddit user named SportsJunkie831 said that he doesn't believe that there is any rehabilitation for anyone who commits crimes of this nature. Subsequent comments from other users iterated that it was premeditated and that such a person should not be allowed in society any longer. The court of public opinion is, thankfully, almost always on the side of victims in these cases. The Middletons were of the same opinion that rehabilitation would not work for Gonzalez. and that he should not be allowed to commit such a heinous crime again. Laura Jordan, Maddie's mother, is unsettled about the proceedings. This is a ridiculous law. All the gangs are going to have 14 and 15-year-olds killing people, she said. The proceedings lasted 3 years and 9 months. Mother Laura fears that her father, Bruce Jordan, who had been a part of the proceedings and now is battling brain cancer, may never get to see justice for her granddaughter because his life expectancy is so short. At the time of this video, it is still uncertain if AJ Gonzalez will be released from prison. On the morning of January the 11th, 1992, two brothers sat in their car. They were driving towards a popular hunting spot that they visited in Madison, Indiana. While this drive was nothing new to them, they spotted something that they did not expect to see on the side of the road. A kind of strange object that they couldn't quite make out. Pulling the car over, the two exited the vehicle, and their hearts dropped. This was not a strange object at all. It was the burned remains of someone. The police were called at 10:55 a.m., where an investigation was immediately launched. Melinda Loveless was a 16-year-old girl from New Albany, and she struggled with her home life. She witnessed her father putting her mother through endless torment, resulting in her mother repeatedly attempting to end her own time on this earth, and this spread throughout her childhood years. With her parents' ultimate divorce, Melinda did her best to establish a circle of friends who could support her. Laurie Tackett was a 17-year-old girl. She had childhood experiences very similar to Melinda, growing up in Madison, Indiana, with parents who allegedly maltreated her. 15-year-old Hope Rippey, whilst more mild than the other two, also experienced a turbulent relationship with her parents amid their divorce, connecting with Melinda and Laurie in their teenage years. Tony Lawrence, who was friends with Rippey since childhood, had struggled after experiencing an attack by a boy in the neighborhood as a child. She too found solace in a group of friends. Shanda Shara was born in Pineville, Kentucky in 1979, ultimately moving to New Albany after her parents divorced. Whilst there, she joined the girls' basketball team and she seemed to be thriving. New Albany is located along the Ohio River in the Midwestern area of the United States, which was historically known for steamboating and as a center for supplies and medical aid during the Civil War. Now, as a major city in Indiana, it has revitalized its downtown scene where each of these girls would call home. In 1990, Melinda Loveless began dating Amanda Heverin. Both of the girls were 14 years old at the time. Despite the young love between them, it was difficult for Amanda to get close to Melinda. It was said that Melinda had consistently displayed erratic behavior, and she struggled to maintain healthy relationships. It was about a year later when Amanda met Shanda at middle school, but it wasn't on good terms. The two of them had gotten into a physical altercation. Since both of them were apparently to blame for the incident, Amanda and Shanda were placed in detention that day. And whilst there, they actually began to talk and get to know each other. Amanda was confused at the interaction, as was Shanda, as they both realised that they could actually be good friends instead of enemies. Deciding to squash the tension between them, Amanda and Shanda became friends. They would send letters back and forth to each other, where they would plan special outings. Amanda had even asked Shanda to come with her to a school dance. Although there did seem to be a romantic tone to their relationship, at that age it wasn't seen to be anything serious. Remember that at this time, Shanda was 12 years old. As the relationship between Amanda and Shanda developed, Melinda became increasingly jealous, unable to contain the anger that rose within her at the thought of her girlfriend spending significant time with someone else. Remember, Melinda and Amanda were an item. Upon hearing that Amanda had asked Shanda to come to the school dance with her, Melinda decided to show up to the event to find Shanda and to confront her. Shanda had no idea what was coming for her. As she was casually dancing, she was met with angry screams of Amanda's girlfriend. Not quite knowing how to respond, Amanda and Shanda both assured Melinda that they were just friends, leaving Melinda utterly dissatisfied and the situation unsettled. In retaliation, Melinda decided to do her best to hurt Amanda for taking her friend Shanda to the dance by getting revenge. She began dating another girl without ever officially breaking up with Amanda. Amanda did her best to battle with the erratic behaviour that Melinda was demonstrating, trying to continue her relationship with Shanda as normal. Later that same month, Amanda and Shanda decided to attend a music festival together, and this threw Melinda into an uncontrollable rage. Melinda began to threaten Shanda in public, making her nervous about what Melinda may do. Since she was only 12, Shanda's parents were concerned for her well-being and her involvement in what seemed to be a toxic relationship between two older teenagers. They decided for Shanda's safety that they would transfer her to a new school, hoping that this would remove her from the drama. But despite removing Shanda from the situation, Melinda couldn't shake the sense of betrayal that she felt from both Shanda and Amanda, spending her days boiling away, plotting what she could do to Shanda to get back at her. On the night of January the 10th, 1992, Melinda met up with her friends Laurie, Tony and Hope at her house, ready for a fun girls' night. Melinda talked with her friends about the events that had been going on between her, Amanda and Shanda, what we as adults see as silly teenage drama that hopefully they would simply forget about by early adulthood. But Melinda couldn't let it go, saying that she wanted to go to Shanda's house and scare her out of spending any more time with Amanda. Stopping at McDonald's to ask for directions, the four girls arrived at Shanda's dad's house in Jeffersonville with a plan to scare her out of ever bothering Melinda or Amanda again. Shanda sat downstairs watching TV after her dad and stepmother had gone to bed, enjoying the final hours of the night before she would go to bed as well, when she heard a knock on the door. Standing outside her front door were two teenage girls that she did not recognize. They asked if Shanda was home. She obviously replied that she was Shanda, but with a feeling of confusion looming inside. The two girls introduced themselves as Hope and Tony, friends of Amanda, calming Shanda's anxiousness at this interaction. The two explained that they were on their way to go and hang out with Amanda at an ominous location named the Witch's Castle. This was an abandoned stone house nearby. Shanda was reluctant to leave with these strangers, explaining that she was still busy until later on that evening. The four older girls then left and attended a music show, returning at around 12:30 AM to retrieve Shanda for a second time. This time it was Laurie and Hope who knocked on the door to retrieve Shanda. While still reluctant, Shanda decided to change her clothes and to go with them. This was the opportunity to spend time with Amanda and her new friends. As Shanda got into the back seat of the car, excited to spend a night out with some new friends, her heart stopped as Melinda jumped out from under a blanket. She was wielding a sharp weapon and held it to her throat. Shanda struggled to respond as Melinda interrogated her, pushing for details about her relationship with Amanda. In reality, she was still a little girl, trapped in a situation that she couldn't escape. Once they arrived at the Witch's Castle, Melinda and Laurie pulled Shanda out of the car. Shanda sobbed uncontrollably. Melinda taunted her whilst wielding the weapon that she'd brought along, threatening to harm her with it and laughing about it with Laurie. The group of girls pushed the situation even further. They tied Shanda's arms and legs with rope. Shanda screamed in fright as she tried to grasp what was actually happening. Remember her age at this time. This is absolutely unthinkable. As Melinda and Laurie continued to taunt Shanda with their plans to harm her, the other two girls acted as if it was a normal night out, dancing to music and hanging out. At some point, Laurie feared that passing cars may spot them, so they decided to leave for another location. Shanda begged for them to release her, as Laurie drove the car to a patch of woods near her house, continuing to relentlessly instill fear into Shanda. With Tony and Hope staying in the car, out of their own fear about how the night had turned into a horror film, Melinda and Laurie brought Shanda to an abandoned building inside the woods. It was here that the true torture began. The two girls used their fists and weapons, leaving Shanda with multiple puncture wounds, slashes and bruises across her body. Finally, as Shanda begged for her life, the two girls used a rope to throttle her until she fell unconscious. They dragged her back to the car and placed her in the trunk. The two girls informed Tony and Hope that Shanda's life had ended. Returning to Laurie's house as if nothing had happened, the four girls drank soda, played games, and listened intently as Laurie told them their future using crystals. At about 3 in the morning, Hope and Tony stay behind, as Laurie and Melinda decided to go back out, country cruising. During this country cruise, they heard the familiar sounds from hours earlier. It was the cries of Shanda emanating from the trunk of the car. Laurie, with no ounce of mercy, stopped the vehicle. She opened the trunk and finished the job using a tire iron. She struck Shanda until silence fell over their remote country road. Instead of feeling any ounce of sorrow for what they had done, Melinda and Laurie joked with eagerness about the pure evil that they had just committed. Just before the sun rose on the morning of January the 11th, Laurie and Melinda returned to the house to wake up the other two girls, telling Laurie's mother that it was time to drive them home. Unknowingly to the parent, Shanda still lay in the trunk of the car. Laurie and Melinda beamed as they told the other two girls the story of what they had done to Shanda just hours before. The four girls stopped at a gas station where they bought a bottle of Pepsi, then emptying it out and filling it with gasoline. They then travelled to a nearby road and stopped alongside a field. Laurie and Hope exited the car. They then wrapped Shanda in a blanket, and Hope poured the gasoline from the Pepsi bottle all over her body. The two lit Shanda's body on fire, quickly fleeing the scene. A few minutes later, Melinda was not convinced that the fire had worked, so they returned once again to pour more gasoline on Shanda. The four girls then went to breakfast at a nearby McDonald's. It was there they laughed and joked about the state of Shanda's body, callously joking about her burns looking similar to the sausage that they were eating. Meanwhile, while all of this was happening, Shanda's father and stepmother were in a state of panic. They could not find any sign of Shanda. Last thing they knew, they left her downstairs watching TV whilst they went to bed. Filing a missing persons report, they waited to hear of any news of where Shanda may be. It didn't take long for Hope and Tony to be overcome with guilt about what had occurred over the past 24 hours. By 8 p.m. that night, the two travelled to the police station, giving almost unintelligible statements between their sobbing. After investigators struggled to get any real usable information, they gained the names of Melinda and Laurie, as well as the location of Shanda's body. Since the location was in a different county than where they had lived, officers had to call the police department from the other county, where they were quickly able to match the story the girls had told with the missing persons report from a few hours before. It didn't take long for detectives to identify the unrecognizable body of Shanda Shara, having to use her dental records. It was almost unfathomable that this type of horror could be committed by teenage girls, by people posing as friends. Shanda's family left devastated. A later autopsy revealed that both times Shanda was set on fire, she was still alive. Due to the brutality and complete lack of remorse by some for what had occurred, all four of the girls were tried as adults for their hand in the homicide of Shanda. Laurie Tackett and Melinda Loveless were sentenced to 60 years in prison, while Hope Rippey ultimately received 35 years and Tony Lawrence received 20 years. Despite these sentences, Tony Lawrence was released on December 14th, 2000. She remained on parole until 2002. Hope Rippey was released on April 28th, 2006, and she served parole until 2011. Laurie Tackett was released on January 11th, 2018, on the 26th anniversary of what she had done to Shanda. Melinda Loveless, the jealous mastermind behind this operation, was released on September 5th, 2019, and she is still serving parole. Shanda's father passed away due to complications relating to alcoholism in 2005. Shanda's mother and younger sister still struggle to this day, battling with the reality of the events that had occurred, a task made even harder by the fact that all of them have now been released from prison. Appearing on a Dr. Phil show, the two recounted their lack of belief that these four girls could ever be rehabilitated, or capable of feeling remorse for the absolute evil that they committed.
Are you walking? Are y'all shopping? Yeah. Go Peanut. Go Peanut.
I can't hear you. Tiffany? All right, Tiffany, I'm going to change these handcuffs out, okay? And then I'm going to roll you over and I'm going to sit you up, all right?
So I know I look crazy, but I'm not crazy. I'm going to get you look crazy.
Tiffany Lucas was born on October 2nd, 1991. From the outside looking in, Tiffany seemed to be living an outgoing life centered around her 2 young sons. Her social media paints a picture of a stereotypical modern family life, with photos that immortalize some fun moments with her boys, Jaden and Maurice. She often referred to the boys as her world, as well as calling them her kings. Tiffany's sons were like many others their age, and according to family and friends, they loved playing sports. The pair warmed the hearts of those around them. Videos of the two show their tight relationship. In one video in particular, the boys are dressed to match, and they can be seen dancing together in shopping aisles. Jaden, the older of the two, joins his mother in cheering his baby brother on as the two of them are repeating, "Go Peanut," in a sing-song way with beaming happy faces. And that is before Peanut, who is but a toddler at the time, falls down on his bottom. The family, though often depicted without a father figure, is always presentable, with Tiffany dressed to impress and her boys well kept. This didn't seem like a struggling single mother at all. On the surface, Tiffany appeared to really have it together, especially when compared to some other young mothers in the Bullitt County area. Tiffany was bubbly and happy, and she showed signs of aspiration and entrepreneurship in her past. It appears that she was really trying to make something for herself. She became a business owner at a young age. Self-employment isn't a path that everyone is brave enough to embark on, but Tiffany had big dreams and she gave it a go. The 25-year-old ambitiously set up Miss Tiff's One Stop. It was a convenience store on Broadway selling snacks, drinks and home-cooked foods, as well as your typical conveniences such as lottery tickets and tobacco. Here she is promoting it on local news.
A lot of people don't make their way down here, but if there's a Walmart, you come out of the woodworks for Walmart. So probably would have brought a lot of people to, stop and check us out.
She clearly had high hopes for the venture and little concern for her growing competition in the area. Tiffany had been interviewed shortly after opening her store, appearing in a segment on the local TV news in 2016, in which she was asked about the new Walmart being opened across the street from her. The young store owner saw it as a positive, believing it would actually bring her more customers. Her optimism, however, was misplaced. As you might expect, the giant brand moving in had the opposite effect. Miss Tiff's One Stop was forced to close around a year later in 2017, something which must have come as a real blow. It may even have been part of the catalyst for what happened next. Around a year after she shut up shop, her police record shows that she pleaded guilty to illicit substance charges, and she had to spend 30 days in jail. Around the time of the charges, Tiffany wasn't doing particularly well. She was already a single mother with one father deceased, and the second no longer in the family home. It seems she sadly turned towards questionable vices as a way of dealing with the obstacles that life was throwing in her way. But perhaps the arrest and short sentence did have an effect on her, because her criminal record shows no further charges between 2018 and 2023. But this is when Tiffany Lucas would be detained for something far, far worse. On November the 8th, 2023 at 11:07 a.m, the local police had reports of shots fired with injury at a Bullitt County residence. Whether the injuries were survivable were not yet known. Most of what authorities could establish came from witnesses. That morning, the husband and wife that lived next door had made an emergency call. They saw Tiffany leave her property and venture onto their driveway, then laying herself down on the ground. The 911 call audio was later released.
My neighbor just came up to my door and just passed out, and I can't get her to wake up. She's
okay, is she breathing?
She is.
How old is she?
I would say in her early 30s. And now she's screaming that the kids are dying. Stay here.
We hear them reporting that Tiffany had come to the door and then began freaking out in their yard. Tiffany's screams can be heard in the background. She yells that the kids are dying, at which point the husband neighbor goes to check on the boys, and he finds that she was telling the truth.
Do we know what happened to him?
I have no idea. We just found our neighbor, the woman, their mom, just freaking out in my yard.
Okay, and how old is he?
Oh my God, he's I don't know, he's probably 6. There's blood all over the bed, there's a gun. Oh my God.
Was he shot?
I don't see a gunshot wound. There's two of them. They're both here. They're breathing.
Okay. There's 2 children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is she able to tell you what's going on or what happened?
No. Do you know what happened? No. She is shaking. She's on something, freaking out. I don't know. She's just laying here now on her stomach.
The bizarre claims that the mother was making whilst being detained are one thing, but watching the body cam and security footage from that day are perhaps one of the oddest things to emerge from this case. Tiffany's strange behaviour puts into question her mindset when she did what she did. Was it an act of pure evil? Was she not in her right mind? Or was she now trying to put on an act to evade punishment?
Conscious? Is she conscious? Yeah. Ma'am, what's your name? Huh?
Tiffany.
I can't hear you.
Tiffany.
Tiffany?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tiffany, I'm going to change these handcuffs out, okay? And then I'm going to roll you over and I'm going to sit you up, all right? I just move everything. Got your handcuffs on. Now I'm going to pick your hands up so you can take these off. Do not struggle. Do you understand me? Okay, now I want you to listen to me. I'm going to take this arm. You're going to roll this direction, okay? You're going to sit up at the same time. You understand? 1, 2, 3. Take this leg, fold it in, make that foot touch your knee. Roll to the side, on the ground. Now we're going to roll again this way, and I'm going to assist you up on your feet, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Have you taken anything? Have you been drinking? Then why can't you stand up? You just don't feel like it, huh?
I said I don't feel right.
Don't feel right? Okay. I guess we'll put her in my car, and when EMS gets done in there, they can come over and check her out.
She outright tells her neighbours that she did it. She gives the cops her name and she doesn't resist at all. But her actions are bizarre. When officers first arrived on the scene, they were greeted by a silent Tiffany laying face down in the neighbour's driveway. Her hair was messy and her eyes were looking unusual. She is led away with her hands poised behind herself, ready for the cuffs that she rightly deserves. The neighbour explains that this is how we found Tiffany in the first place. That he had left his house to get in his truck, and he saw his neighbour freaking out and collapsed. His wife then began calling 911, initially assuming that Tiffany herself was in need of medical attention. But after hearing her mention her children, when they go to check, they walk in on an unexpected scene, impossible to comprehend and difficult to stomach. Emergency responders arrived on the scene. There they took 6-year-old Maurice Baker Jr. and 9-year-old Jaden Howard straight to Norton Children's Hospital. The seemingly picture-perfect mother had attacked them both at point-blank range. The police, the paramedics and the neighbours that had to walk into that scene, I'm sure they will never be the same again. Not long after attending Tiffany's house, Bullitt County Sheriff's Office published a press release to inform residents after hearing the shots. The press release stated 2 males aged 6 and 9 had been taken to Norton Hospital and that a person of interest had been detained. And as we know, the person detained was their own mother, Tiffany Ann Catherine Lucas, the woman who had only recently uploaded a variety of fun photos depicting her and her boys dressed up for Halloween. These pictures would be used later in her case. They show Tiffany dressed as Princess Leia, accompanied by her eldest sporting a stormtrooper outfit, and her youngest dressed as Yoda. The post is captioned, "Happy Halloween, may the Force be with you." The mother also took a fun video of the three visiting a local Waffle House just the day before this happened. So how could things go this wrong? She was interviewed for around 3 hours by Detective Beale, in which she attested that no one else had been in the home. She says very little in regard to motive, but she does make guilty statements, saying things like, "I'm so stupid" and "I am in a bad spot," which may be the understatement of the century. Among what little the woman did say during her interrogation were a few strange exclamations. She confessed that she must have been manipulated through Wi-Fi signals and the internet, specifically honing in on Facebook. She insisted she would never have done something like that, unless, that is, she was being manipulated. She also rambles a little about violent video games. The clips that would later surface online show her attitude throughout the interview as strange, similarly to when they first found her on a driveway. During questioning, she said that the incident was an accident. She also asks if the boys are okay, which is bizarre when she was the one pulling the trigger. Tiffany in no way walks anyone through the events of that morning. The mother remained in jail while she awaited her trial, with her bond set at $2 million. We do hear cases of mothers just snapping in an overwhelming moment, but in these cases there is often an existing maltreatment or historical family issues. Other than possible financial issues and her substance misuse, it doesn't really seem like that was the case here. Tiffany had plenty of support and plenty of family members who doted on the two brothers. They would have gladly taken the boys at the drop of a hat. Instead, she took them away from them. This is something that would become very apparent in family statements at her trial. They really did pour their hearts out. Jaden's grandmother, Regina Rowland, spoke first at Tiffany's sentencing, and she didn't hold back.
You know we love Jaden and Maurice. You know Jaden was the only thing we had left. And you took him from us. You know I had already lost his dad. And then my other son. And then you took Jaden. You have ripped our lives apart. And you know that you could have gave them kids to us, and we would have took care of them. But you have been selfish. My heart is in pieces.
Tiffany, in her bright orange jumpsuit and cuffs, showed no real emotion. Her eyes seemed empty, devoid of feelings. She attested that she had been in no way suffering with her mental health. This ruled out any possibilities of an insanity plea. However, her defense still tried to argue that the woman hadn't been in her right mind. Really, how could she be when the events had unfolded on that fateful day?
The defense, while not excusing Lucas's brutal behavior, for the first time in court showed surveillance video of her mental state and hallucinations from drugs just one day before the murders. She's heard telling a neighbor, "I need you. God is talking to me. I need help."
Her odd, almost shell-shocked demeanour in the body cam footage, and the wild Wi-Fi manipulation claims she shared with the sheriff when detained, are probably conflicting to that, if she was being genuine. But regardless, she was treated as sound of mind. Her defense tried to insist that Tiffany had suffered from psychosis, and this was caused by a secret opioid addiction. They revealed that Tiffany believed God was speaking to her directly, and mentioned that the woman had seen scripture written in the bark of a tree. She also stuck with her original social media manipulation story. However, her family didn't seem to believe she was suffering from any mental health issues. It came to light after the shooting when relatives returned to the family home. The house was in disarray. The utilities were off, with long overdue bills mounting up, and there were eviction notices. It seems that Tiffany's life was far from the one depicted on her social media accounts. I mean, would you guess that was the case from these videos?
Are you walking? Are y'all shopping? Yeah. Go Peanut.
Another important detail to note with this case is that Maurice's stepmother, Michelle Rice, had previously made a call to Child Protective Services because she was concerned about the boys living with Tiffany. However, she felt that her complaint hadn't been taken seriously, and had CPS intervened, the two may still be here today. The family couldn't understand how the woman had gone from trick-or-treating just a week before to doing what she did in their family home. Despite the concerns brewing under the surface regarding Tiffany's capabilities personally, no one had an inkling she would do something like this. The jury sat through the emotional testimonies, photos and footage, and heard the tragic tale from start to finish. Most horrendous for them to sit through was a statement from Chief Deputy Colonel Alex Payne. His testimony revealed to them that when the boys were found by the responding officers, both of them were still alive, despite their wounds being fatally located. Of course, they were rushed off by emergency services, regardless of how hopeless saving them seemed, but each lost their battle shortly after. One can't help but think how terrified the brothers must have been during those last horrifying moments. They would have trusted their mother implicitly, and Tiffany had broken their trust in the worst imaginable way. One of the boys would have seen what their mother did to their brother, probably knowing it was coming to them too. It really is hard to wrap your head around. Tiffany put in an open guilty plea, giving the judge full license to sentence her as he saw fit. Judge Rodney Burrs felt little sympathy, giving Tiffany an unforgiving life sentence for each of her children. While Tiffany will serve 2 life sentences for the lives that she took away, without giving any real explanation for what she did, the families involved will likely never be able to recover.